The world before history begins not with a shout, not with a sudden spark of invention, but with the slow, gray dilution of the night. It begins in the immense silence of a planet that has not yet been named, in a time when the continents were shaped much as they are today, yet wore a wilder, more ancient coat of green and gold. Picture, if you will, the vast, rolling theater of the Pleistocene savannah. It is a landscape of infinite possibility, stretching from the volcanic highlands of the Rift Valley to the distant, shimmering coasts, all of it held in the cool, spectral grip of the pre-dawn mist. To understand the morning of our ancestors, we must first understand the absolute, crushing weight of the prehistoric night. For millions of years, the setting of the sun was the closing of a heavy gate. Darkness was not merely the absence of light, it was a physical presence, a distinct and hostile territory, ruled by those with slit-pupiled eyes and velvet paws. We, the naked-skinned, the upright walkers, the tool-makers, were exiles in this nocturnal kingdom. We did not own the dark, and so the arrival of the morning was never a mundane event. It was a daily resurrection, a silent victory of survival against the statistical probability of death. Imagine the atmosphere of this lost world in the hour before the sun breaks the horizon. The air is still, possessing a heaviness that amplifies the smallest sounds. The snap of a dry twig, the rustle of a small rodent in the underbrush, the distant, mournful call of a scavenger returning to its den. The temperature has plummeted. In the high plateaus of ancient Africa, or the wind-scoured tundras that would come later, the difference between the heat of noon and the chill of dawn was a shock to the system. This biting cold is the first sensation to breach the sanctuary of sleep. It is a reminder, sharp and physical, that we are fragile creatures. We are animals who have traded the thick, insulating pelts of our primate cousins for the ability to sweat and run under the midday sun. But in the blue hour, that trade feels costly. The cold seeks out exposed skin, prickling the hairs on the arms, a ghostly memory of a fur coat we lost aeons ago, leaving us shivering and vulnerable in the gray light. There is no alarm clock here, no artificial chime to sever the dream. Instead, there is a synchronization with the light, a biological hum that rises within the blood as the stars begin to fade. Deep within the brain, in the ancient reptilian clusters of neurons that govern our rhythms, a signal is sent. It is the circadian conductor lifting its baton. A subtle shift in the code of life begins to occur. Melatonin, the chemical lullaby that has kept the tribe in the suspension of sleep, begins to recede, washing away like a tide going out. In its place, cortisol and adrenaline begin to drip slowly into the bloodstream, not in a rush of panic, but in a gentle, rising swell. It is the body preparing itself for the rigors of consciousness, warming the engine before the ignition is turned. In the safety of a rocky overhang, perhaps a shallow cave carved by wind and rain into the side of a limestone cliff, the tribe lies in a pile. Or perhaps, if we travel further back in the mists of time, they are nestled in the high, sturdy branches of a sleeping tree, clinging to the safety of the canopy, like the apes from which we descended. But let us imagine them on the ground, for it was the descent to the earth that made us truly human. This transition, from the safety of the branch to the vulnerability of the cave floor, changed everything about how we slept and how we woke. On the ground, sleep became deeper, more intense, but also more perilous. To sleep on the earth is to trust your kin completely. And so, the awakening is a communal experience. The first eyes blink open. They are dark, watchful eyes, framed by heavy brows, eyes that have evolved to spot the tawny hide of a lion in the tall grass. They scan the ceiling of the rock shelter, reading the quality of the light filtering in from the entrance. It is the blue hour, that suspended moment when the world has lost the monochrome terror of night, but has not yet gained the vibrant color of day. Everything is rendered in shades of slate, charcoal, and indigo. The transition from the landscape of dreams to the landscape of survival is slow. There is no sudden movement. To move quickly is to startle, and in the wild, to startle is to signal danger. Bodies uncurl from the communal pile with a deliberate, languid heaviness. This pile, this huddle, is the original architecture of the home. It is a tangle of limbs and torsos, a shared battery of warmth. We must remember that for the vast majority of our existence, the concept of a private bedroom would have been alien, perhaps even terrifying. Solitude was synonymous with death. To wake up alone was a nightmare. To wake up entangled in the arms and legs of your family, smelling the familiar scents of wood smoke, cured hide, and unwashed skin, was the ultimate reassurance. As the consciousness of the tribe ascends, we witness the quiet shuffling of the morning ritual. A limb stretches, stiff from the unyielding hardness of the earth. We have no soft mattresses here. The bedding consists of woven piles of sedge grass, aromatic leaves chosen to repel insects, and perhaps the ragged furs of antelope or bear. These materials rustle softly as the sleepers shift. A soft exhale of breath is visible in the chill air, a momentary cloud of white vapor that proves life still burns within. They do not rush. This is a crucial distinction between their time and ours. In the modern world, we wake with a sense of deficit, already behind schedule. In the Pleistocene, the morning was a time of energy conservation. The human body is an expensive machine to run. The brain alone consumes a massive percentage of our caloric intake. To rush into the cold morning air without purpose would be a biological error. And so, they simply exist. They lie in the semi-darkness, allowing their heart rates to normalize, allowing the stiffness to bleed from their joints. This period of waking is a sensory meditation. They are listening. The ears of early humans were tuned to a frequency of survival that we have largely lost. They are filtering the auditory landscape. They listen for the morning chorus of the birds, the francolins and the weavers. The birds are the sentinels of the savannah. If the birds are singing, the predators are likely resting. If the birds are silent, or if they erupt in sudden chaotic alarm calls, the tribe knows to stay hidden. The silence of the morning is not empty. It is a canvas upon which the news of the day is written. Picture a single individual, perhaps a young male, sitting up slowly near the entrance of the shelter. He draws a fur wrap tighter around his shoulders. He looks out over the valley floor, which is still submerged in a sea of mist. This mist is a blanket, hiding the herds of wildebeest and zebra that are also beginning to stir. He watches the horizon, waiting for the first true warmth. This waiting is not passive boredom. It is a state of active presence. He is reading the wind. Is it blowing from the waterhole? Does it carry the metallic scent of blood from a kill made in the night? Or does it carry the dry, dusty smell of a coming drought? This stillness is a survival strategy. By keeping still, the human form blends into the shadows of the rock. We are ambush predators, but we are also prey. The leopard, the saber-toothed cat, the giant hyena, these monsters own the twilight. As the light strengthens, the balance of power begins to shift. The night hunters are visual creatures of the dark. The harsh light of the sun hurts their sensitive eyes. As the gray dawn brightens, the humans begin to reclaim the world. The retreat of the shadows is the retreat of the monsters. There is a profound biological elegance to this slow awakening. Inside the bodies of these ancestors, the metabolic fires are being stoked. The hunger begins to gnaw, a hollow, cramping sensation in the belly. They have not eaten for 12 hours, perhaps longer. The glycogen stores in their livers are depleted. This hunger is not a nuisance. It is a tool. It is the chemical drive that will eventually force them up and out into the wilderness. It is the motivation to sharpen the spear, to walk the 10 miles, to dig for the tuber. But for now, in the stillness, the hunger is just a quiet companion, a familiar rhythm of the gut. As the light shifts from gray to a bruised purple and then to the softest pink, the visual world returns. Color is a luxury of the day. Our eyes, evolved from primates who needed to spot ripe red fruit amidst green leaves, are useless in the dark. But now, the cones in the retina begin to fire. The dull shapes of the cave floor resolve into tools. A hand axe chipped from obsidian, resting where it was left the night before. A woven basket, a pile of bones cracked for their marrow. These objects are the silent witnesses of their lives, and seeing them again grounds the sleeper in reality. I am here. I am alive. This is my tool. Consider the social dimension of this hour. In the huddle, the waking of one often triggers the waking of another. A mother shifts, and the infant clinging to her chest stirs, letting out a small mewling sound. She hushes it with a gentle touch, a stroke of a calloused hand down a soft back. This touch is more than affection. It is a check-in. In the silence of the pre-dawn, the tribe reaffirms its bonds without a single word. Grooming might begin here, the picking of lice or ticks, the smoothing of hair. It is a low-energy activity that bonds the group before the high-stakes drama of the hunt begins. The only sounds are the rhythmic smacking of lips, the soft grunts of acknowledgement, the rustle of skin against skin. This is a time of deep, cognitive loading. The elders, those who have survived enough mornings to have silver in their hair, are likely running simulations in their minds. They are remembering the patterns of the previous day. The herd was moving west, they might think, visualizing the map of the territory. The routes by the river should be ready. We often underestimate the intellectual life of early humans, assuming they were reactive beasts. But to survive the Ice Age or the drought-stricken scrublands required immense planning and memory. The quiet morning was the planning phase, the mental rehearsal of the day's journey. Let us expand our view to the environment outside the shelter. The dew is heavy on the grass. In the microscopic topography of a single blade of grass, a water droplet holds the reflection of the inverted world. The insects are still torpid, frozen by the cold, waiting for the sun to unlock their muscles. This is why the early bird catches the worm, and why the early human might catch the lizard or the beetle. The world is slower in the cold. The air smells of wet earth, a primordial petrichor, and the aromatic oils of crushed sage and thyme. In the distance, the silhouette of the landscape becomes sharp. If we are in the Great Rift Valley, the jagged teeth of the mountains cut into the lightening sky. If we are in the steppes of the north, the endless flat horizon hints at the vastness of the walking that must be done. This landscape is not scenery. It is a pantry, a weapon, a home, and a grave. It is entirely indifferent to the humans watching it, and yet the humans feel a profound connection to it. They do not see themselves as separate from this nature. They are woven into it. The rising of the sun is not an astronomical event to them. It is a personal gift. There is a moment just before the sun actually breaks the horizon, where the light takes on a golden, liquid quality. The gray dissolves completely. The birdsong reaches a crescendo, a chaotic, joyful assertion of life. And then, the first sliver of the sun appears. It is a blinding, burning arc of fire. The reaction in the camp is visceral. Bodies turn towards the light like flowers. The warmth travels across the distance of space and hits the skin, instantly beginning the work of thermoregulation. The shivering stops. The muscles loosen. This moment of sunrise is likely the origin of all worship. For a species that relies on sight, the return of the light is the return of safety. It is the return of truth. In the dark, the imagination creates monsters. In the light, we see only what is there. One can imagine a hush falling over the group as the disk of the sun detaches from the horizon and begins its climb. It is a daily miracle. The first breath of the morning is not just the intake of air, it is the intake of hope. But let us not romanticize this too deeply without acknowledging the hardship. For some in the tribe, this morning is a morning of pain. An old injury from a hunt aches in the damp cold. A tooth abscess throbs with the rising blood pressure. A child coughs, a dry, rattling sound that worries the mother. The morning reveals the toll of the savage world. The light exposes the wounds. And yet, the resilience of these beings is staggering. They rise. They stand on 2 feet, that unstable, miraculous posture that defines our lineage. They stand up against gravity, against the cold, against the odds. As the sun climbs higher, the blue hour evaporates. The world turns technicolor. The golden savanna grass blazes. The green of the forest edge deepens. The mist burns off, revealing the game trails that crisscross the valley floor. The first breath is finished. The day has begun. The tribe begins to separate from the pile. The singular entity of the sleeping group dissolves into individuals. A man picks up a spear, testing its weight. A woman adjusts the sling that carries her baby. Water skins are gathered. The biological hum that started as a whisper is now a steady rhythm of activity. But before the marching, before the hunting, before the struggle, there was that pause, that long, gray, quiet dilation of time. It is a vestige we still carry. Think of your own mornings. Think of the desire to hit the snooze button, to linger in the warmth of the covers, to stare blankly out the window with a cup of coffee. We view this as laziness, but perhaps it is an ancient echo. Perhaps it is the memory of the cave, the instinct to lie still and listen to the world before we step out into it. We are descendants of those who waited, who listened, who let the sun warm their bones before they faced the danger of the day. The first breath of the morning is a bridge. It bridges the vulnerability of sleep and the agency of wakefulness. It bridges the animal and the human. In that silent, misty hour, our ancestors were poised between 2 worlds, breathing in the cold air of the Pleistocene and exhaling the vapor of a story that would eventually lead to us. They blink, they stretch, they look at the light, and they begin again. As the sun fully conquers the sky, the chemistry of the camp changes once more. The slow, meditative state gives way to the demands of the stomach. The fire, which had been allowed to die down to mere embers during the deepest part of the night, becomes the new focal point. A figure, perhaps the one who woke first, crouches by the blackened hearth. This is the transition from the internal warmth of the body to the external warmth of the technology that saved us. The resurrection of the ember is the next crucial beat in the rhythm of the day, but it stands on the foundation of that first, slow awakening. We must appreciate the sheer endurance involved in this daily cycle. For hundreds of thousands of years, across ice ages that froze the seas and interglacials that turned deserts into gardens, this scene played out. The setting changed. The tools became more refined. The languages grew more complex. But the morning remained the same. The gray light, the cold skin, the huddle, the listening. It is a haunting thought to realize that the morning sky you saw today is the same sky they watched. The sun is the same star. The feeling of cold air in your lungs is the same sensation. We are separated from them by eons of time, by layers of sediment and civilization. But in the first breath of the morning, we are identical. We are waking animals, looking for the light, hungry for the day, and grateful, in our own silent way, to have survived the night. The silence of the pre-dawn prehistoric world was not merely an absence of noise. It was a heavy, protective cloak. In the dense forests of Europe, where our Neanderthal cousins slept, the morning light would filter through the canopy in shafts of green and gold, illuminating the mossy floor. For them, the awakening might have been even slower, insulated by the thick walls of the forest. In the open savannas of our direct ancestors, The exposure was greater, the horizon wider, the need for vigilance sharper. But the biological imperative remained constant. Conserve, listen, prepare. We can imagine the texture of this world with high fidelity, the grit of dust in the eyes, the smell of one's own unwashed body, a scent that was not offensive but simply the smell of human, the taste of the morning mouth, dry, perhaps tasting of the wild onions eaten the night before. These are the intimate details of history that fossils cannot preserve. The fossil record gives us the bones, but it does not give us the shiver. It does not give us the grogginess. It does not give us the sensation of a cold foot touching the bare earth. Storytelling must fill this gap, reconstructing the sensory reality of the past from the clues left in our own biology. Why do we yawn? It is a reflex seen in the womb, a way to cool the brain and increase alertness. As the tribe wakes, a contagion of yawns would ripple through the group. It was a social signal, a physiological synchronization of the group's state of arousal. We are waking up together. We are transitioning states together. It aligned the group's energy. This simple act, which we stifle in boardrooms today, was a vital piece of communication in the morning twilight. And what of the dreams they left behind? As they shook off the sleep, did the images of the night linger? Did they dream of hunts that never happened? Did they dream of ancestors long dead? The boundary between the dream world and the waking world was likely more porous for them. In a world without writing, dreams were messages, omens, visits from the spirit world. The first few minutes of the morning might have been spent sharing these visions, murmuring in low tones about the buffalo seen in the sleep site, or the warning given by a spirit lion. The morning was not just a physical awakening, but a spiritual debriefing. This slow start was also a necessity for the joints and muscles. These were bodies that worked hard. Their skeletons show the signs of immense exertion. Thickened cortical bone, massive muscle attachments, healed fractures, signs of arthritis even in the young. They carried heavy loads, threw heavy spears, dug into hard earth. The morning stiffness was a reality for almost everyone. The slow uncurling described earlier was a therapeutic necessity. They needed to lubricate the joints, to stretch the fascia, before they could sprint or carry. The morning stretch is an ancient orthopedic instinct. As the sun finally establishes its dominance, casting long shadows that stretch westward across the grass, the day officially begins. The mist has vanished, ghosted away by the heat. The birds have settled into their daytime routines. The predators have retreated to the deep shade. The stage is set for the human drama to unfold. But the memory of that first breath remains. The quiet, the cold, the connection. It is the foundation of the day, the silent prayer of the body before the labor of survival begins. In the modern world, we have conquered the night with electricity and the cold with central heating. We have banished the silence with constant media. But deep inside, our biology still expects the slow, gray dilution of the night. It expects the huddle. It expects the cold air. And perhaps when we feel out of sorts in our frantic mornings, it is because we have severed this ancient connection to the first breath of the morning. We are trying to sprint before we have listened. We are trying to speak before we have tuned into the silence. Let us leave them there, in that moment of transition, standing on the precipice of the day. The sun is on their faces. The tribe is awake. The fire is waiting to be born. The world is vast, dangerous, and beautiful, and they are ready to walk into it, one step at a time. The first breath is taken. The history of humanity continues. As the great wheel of the stars begins to fade, surrendering the sky to the creeping violet of the dawn, the focus of the world contracts. It moves from the vast, indifferent horizon of the Pleistocene wilderness to a singular, intimate point of geography, a circle of blackened stones. Here, in the center of the camp, lies the sleeping heart of the tribe. It is a mound of ash, gray and soft as moth wings, silent and seemingly dead. But beneath this powdery shroud lies a secret, a captive force of nature that separates us from every other creature that roams the earth. This is the hearth, the altar of our survival, the provider of the only warmth that does not come from the sun. The air is still biting, a sharp, crystalline cold that settles in the lungs like frost. The blue hour is passing, and the sky bleeds from gray to a bruised purple, a transition that signals the return of sight but not yet the return of heat. In this fragile gap between the protection of the night's huddle and the activity of the day, a figure stirs. They separate themselves from the tangle of sleeping bodies, moving with a quiet reverence. They are the keeper of the flame, a role that carries the weight of life and death. If the fire dies, the cold wins. If the fire dies, the shadows return. And so, the first true task of the day is not a hunt nor a journey, but a resurrection. The figure crouches by the stones. Their knees press into the dirt, skin toughened by years of contact with the rough floor of the cave or the grit of the savannah. They lean forward, their face hovering inches from the ash pile. This is a posture of submission and dominance intertwined, bowing before the element yet commanding it to wake. With a hand that is both calloused and impossibly gentle, they brush away the top layer of white ash. It is a surgical excavation. They are searching for the seed of the fire, the ember. Deep within the insulating layers of last night's remains, a faint, dull glow reveals itself. It is the color of a dying star, a deep, brooding garnet red, pulsing faintly with the rhythm of the wind that sneaks through the shelter's entrance. This ember is a survivor. It has held onto its heat through the long, freezing hours of the dark, banking its energy, waiting for this specific moment of intervention. The keeper pauses, respecting the fragility of the thing. To rush is to smother it. To ignore it is to let it starve. Then begins the transfer of spirit. The keeper draws a deep breath, filling their lungs with the cold, oxygen-rich air of the morning. They purse their lips and release a stream of air, a focused, steady whisper directed at the heart of the glow. This is the first technology, the manipulation of chemistry through breath. The oxygen hits the carbon of the charcoal. The reaction is instantaneous. The dull red brightens to a vivid, angry orange. The heat spikes. The ember is breathing back. This ritual, performed in the gray light of dawn, is perhaps the oldest continuous ceremony in human history. Before we had complex language, before we painted lions on the walls of caves, we had this conversation with the fire. It is a dialogue of physics. The keeper adds a pinch of tinder, dry moss, shaved bark, or the fluff of cattails kept dry in a leather pouch. They place it with the precision of a jeweler setting a stone. The tinder smokes, curls, and then, with a sudden silent pop, catches. A tiny tongue of yellow flame licks upward, desperate and hungry. The smoke rises. It is a thin, acrid ribbon that spirals toward the ceiling of the rock shelter or drifts into the canopy of the trees. It carries a scent that is more evocative than any other smell in the human experience. It is the smell of wood smoke. To a wolf, this smell spells danger, a signal to flee. To a deer, it is the scent of a forest fire, a panic trigger. But to us, and only to us, this scent triggers a physiological release. It smells of safety. It smells of home. This olfactory signal is burned into our genetic memory, etched into the olfactory bulb of the brain alongside the most primal instincts. For over 1 million years, since the days of Homo erectus wandering the scorched earth, the smell of smoke has meant that the tribe is gathered, that the food is cooking, that the weapon against the night is active. As the smoke hits the nostrils of the sleeping tribe, it acts as a chemical bell. It pulls them gently from the depths of their dreams. It tells the reptile brain that the perimeter is secure. However, This gift came with a cost. The history of the hearth is also written in the scars of our ancestors. Paleoanthropologists, examining the fossilized ribs and sinuses of early humans, often find the evidence of chronic respiratory distress. The same smoke that kept the hyenas at bay also filled the lungs with particulates. The walls of the caves were blackened with soot, and so were we. It was a trade-off, a quintessential evolutionary bargain. We accepted the cough, the stinging eyes, and the blackened phlegm in exchange for the warmth that allowed us to conquer the cold latitudes. We traded perfect lungs for a warm night. As the flame grows, fed now by small twigs and then thicker branches, the light shifts. The harsh, flat gray of the dawn is softened by the dancing amber illumination of the fire. The temperature within the immediate circle begins to rise, and now the tribe gathers. They do not stand up and march away, not yet. The gravitational pull of the hearth is too strong. One by one, they detach from the sleeping pile and migrate the few feet to the fire circle. They move like moths, guided by phototaxis and thermotaxis, the biological drive to move toward light and heat. They sit on their haunches, or cross-legged on the earth, wrapping their arms around their knees. They sit shoulder to shoulder, forming a wall of human flesh around the fire. This formation, the circle, is not an accident. It is the geometric manifestation of equality and defense. With backs to the darkness and faces to the light, everyone is equal before the flame. There is no head of the table here. There is only the ring. In this circle, the heat is shared. The thermal radiation travels through the air, hitting the skin of the face, the chest, the shins. It penetrates the dermis, dilating the blood vessels, sending warm blood rushing to the frozen extremities. You can almost hear the collective sigh of the group as the heat seeps into muscles tight from the night's cold. The physiology of this moment is profound. We are tropical animals living in a glacial world. Without fur, our bodies burn an immense amount of calories just to maintain our internal temperature of 37 degrees Celsius. The night is a caloric drain, a thief that steals energy every second. The fire stops the theft. It provides external energy, allowing the body to down-regulate its own metabolic furnace. By sitting by the fire, our ancestors were saving precious calories that could later be used for hunting, for thinking, for growing the massive brains that define our species. The fire was not just a tool. It was an external stomach and an external coat. There is no complex conversation yet. The Broca's area of the brain, the center of speech, is still sluggish. The morning is not the time for planning the hunt or debating the hierarchy. It is the time for being. There are only low murmurs, the clearing of throats, the rustle of shifting weight. This silence is not empty. It is heavy with connection. It is the original meditation. Picture the eyes of the tribe. 10, 20 pairs of eyes, all fixed on the same point. The flickering, chaotic movement of the flames. Why do we stare at fire? Even today, in our high-tech penthouses, we install gas fireplaces that mimic this ancient reaction. We stare because the fire is living information. It moves, it changes, it breathes, yet it stays in one place. It mimics the movement of a living thing, capturing our predator-prey attention systems, but it offers no threat. This induces a trance state. The brain waves slow down, shifting from the beta waves of alert problem-solving to the alpha waves of relaxed focus. In this shared trance, the bonds of the group are cemented. They are sharing a hallucination of warmth and light. They are witnessing the same miracle. This psychological synchronization is the glue of the Paleolithic band. Before they go out to face the mammoths, the lions, and the hostile clans, they must first be one entity. The fire melts the individual into the collective. In the silence of the hearth, grievances are often forgotten, or at least suspended. The warmth softens the temper as much as it softens the muscles. The fire also serves as a clock. The state of the fire tells the time. A high, roaring fire means the night is young or the morning is fully awake. A bed of dying coals means the transition is coming. The resurrection of the ember marks the beginning of the human day, distinguishing our time from the sun's time. Animals wake when the sun rises. Humans wake when the fire is built. We had begun to decouple ourselves from the rhythms of the solar system, creating our own microstar in the center of our world. As the fire stabilizes, cracking and popping as it consumes the wood, the sensory landscape of the camp transforms. The smell of the smoke mixes with the smell of the earth. The light creates long, dancing shadows that play against the walls of the cave or the trees, shadows that look like spirits, like ancestors watching from the periphery. This is the birthplace of storytelling. Though the morning is silent, the stage is being set for the evening, when the same fire will illuminate the faces of the storytellers. But for now, in the morning, the story is internal. Consider the hands that tend this fire. As the flames grow higher, other hands reach out, not to feed the fire, but to bathe in it. Palms open, fingers splayed, held close to the heat. These hands are the marvel of evolution, dexterous, sensitive, capable of making a flint scraper or caressing a child. But they are also sensitive to the cold. The fire warms the stiff tendons, bringing dexterity back to the fingers that will need to tie knots, throw spears, and dig roots in the hours to come. The warming of the hands is the tooling up of the tribe. And let us not forget the fear. The fire is a weapon. The resurrection of the ember is the reloading of the gun. Outside the circle of light, the world is still dangerous. The saber-toothed cat, the cave bear, the dire wolf, they respect the flame. They understand the red flower that bites. The tribe knows this. The act of blowing on the embers is an act of declaring sovereignty over the immediate territory. Here, the fire says, is a place where monsters cannot go. The relief of seeing the flames leap up is the relief of a siege lifted. The walls are back up. But this weapon requires constant feeding. The relationship with the fire is reciprocal. We feed it, and it feeds us. This created a new kind of labor, a new kind of duty. The firekeeper was likely one of the first specialized roles in human society. To let the fire die was not just a mistake. It was a crime against the tribe. It meant hours of friction with fire sticks or sparks with flint, a calorie-wasting struggle that could spell death in a blizzard. So the ember in the morning is a treasure. It is an inheritance from the night before, passed down like a torch. As the morning progresses, the fire changes character. It shifts from the frantic, smoky fire of the startup to the steady, hot burn of the cooking fire. Stones are placed nearer to the heat. Perhaps water, carried in skins or bladders, is set near it to warm. The anticipation of food begins to rise. The fire is the digestive engine of the tribe. It breaks down the tough fibers of meat and tuber, doing the work that our ancestors' massive jaws used to do. Because of the fire, we could have smaller teeth, smaller guts, and larger brains. We are children of the hearth, shaped by the very element we are now coaxing to life. The smoke thickens, drifting out of the cave mouth, a signal flag to the wider world. It marks the presence of humanity. In the vast empty landscapes of the prehistoric world, these thin columns of smoke were the only sign that we existed. They were the lighthouses of the Stone Age. A hunter returning from a multi-day trek would see that distant gray smudge against the sky and know that his kin were there, that the heart of the universe was still beating. But for now, the tribe simply sits. The sun has not yet fully crested the horizon to bathe the world in natural heat. The fire is the only sun that matters. They watch the wood turn from brown to black to red to white ash. They watch the sparks fly upward, vanishing into the gloom like prayers. They are absorbing the energy they will need to face the wilderness. They are charging their biological batteries. This moment of stillness, centered around the resurrection of the ember, is a vestige we still carry. It is why we love the ritual of the morning coffee, the warmth in the hand, the steam rising, the quiet preparation before the chaos of the commute. It is why we are drawn to candle-lit dinners. It is why, when we go camping, the first thing we do is gather wood. We are trying to recreate the circle. We are trying to touch the memory of that first safety, that first conquest of the dark. The figure who blew life into the coals sits back now, wiping ash from their hands. Their job is done. The heart is beating. The blood of the camp is flowing. The gray dawn has been pushed back by the golden sphere of influence. The tribe breathes in unison, a collective inhale of smoke and warmth. The night is over. The ember has risen, and with it, so have we. As the warmth stabilizes, the paralysis of the morning chill begins to lift completely. The tribe begins to unfurl. The huddle that defined the night and the early morning starts to break apart. But it breaks apart slowly, organically. A child leaves the circle to fetch a tool. A mother stands to stretch her back, her silhouette framed by the firelight against the cave wall. The circle expands, but the center holds. The transition from the meditative state to the active state is bridged by the fire. It is the catalyst. Without it, the morning would be a grim struggle against hypothermia. With it, the morning is a slow, graceful awakening. The fire provides the confidence to step away. It is the base camp. You can leave the fire because you know it is there to return to. It allows the humans to venture out into the cold, knowing that a pocket of tropical heat awaits them. In the silence of the gene, we remember this. We remember the specific crackle of dry juniper catching fire. We remember the smell of burning pine resin. We remember the way the smoke stings if the wind changes direction, a small price to pay for survival. The resurrection of the ember is not just a chapter in a documentary. It is the opening verse of the Song of Civilization. It is the moment we decided that we would not just endure the world, but that we would alter it. We would bring the sun down to earth and keep it in a ring of stones. And as the day fully breaks, painting the sky in the true blues and whites of the morning, the fire continues to burn. It will burn all day, tended by the old and the young, a constant companion. But its most important work is already done. It has woken the sleepers. It has warmed the hunters. It has united the tribe. The ember has done its duty. The day can now begin. The narrative of the fire is also the narrative of the shadow. As the flames leap higher, the shadows on the cave walls dance more frantically. To the early human mind, heavily reliant on pattern recognition, these shadows were not mere tricks of light. They were the spirits of the animals, the ghosts of the ancestors, the manifestation of the dream world bleeding into reality. The hearth was the cinema of the Pleistocene. It was where the imagination was incubated. In the staring into the fire, the human mind drifted into abstract thought. What is the fire? Where does it go when it dies? Who gave it to us? The fire provoked questions, and questions provoked the growth of the mind. We must also consider the fuel. The gathering of wood was a constant background radiation of their lives. Every stick burned was a stick that had to be found, broken, carried, and dried. The area around the camp would be denuded of fuel, forcing them to range further and further. The hunger of the fire forced the tribe to move. It dictated their migration patterns. When the wood was gone, the fire would die, and so the tribe had to move. We followed the fire as much as we carried it. The connection between the fire and the stomach is unbreakable, but in this early hour, it is the connection between the fire and the soul that matters most. The warmth on the face is a form of affection. In a world that is often brutal, indifferent, and physically punishing, the fire is a source of comfort that is reliable. It is a friend that does not judge, does not demand, but simply gives. The resurrection is an act of gratitude to this friend. As the camera of our mind's eye pulls back from the close-up of the glowing coals, we see the wider scene. The smoke rising from the camp joins the mist of the valley. The orange glow of the fire competes with the orange glow of the rising sun. Two suns, one celestial, one terrestrial, one given by the universe, one made by human hands. This duality is the essence of our species. We are the children of the sun, but we are the masters of the ember. The silence of the group begins to fracture. The first words are spoken. Short, utilitarian sounds. A grunt pointing toward the waterskins. A murmur to a child. The spell of the pure thermal connection is breaking, replaced by the logistics of survival. But the bond remains. They have started the day together, in the ring, in the warmth. They have undergone the daily ritual of resurrection. They have defeated the dark once again. And deep within the marrow of their bones, the heat lingers. It will carry them through the freezing streams they must cross, the windy ridges they must traverse. They carry the fire with them, not just in their hands, but in their blood. The resurrection of the ember is complete. The day of the human has dawned. The sun has now fully detached itself from the horizon, hanging suspended like a disk of hammered bronze above the acacia-studded plains. The blue hour of the morning is a fading memory, replaced by the stark, clarifying light of the Pleistocene day. The shadows, once long and phantasmal, begin to shorten, retreating beneath the trees and the stones. And with this shift in light comes a shift in the fundamental state of the tribe. The stasis of the night is broken, the huddle dissolves, the great walking begins. To understand this moment, we must strip away our modern conception of travel. For us, travel is a disruption, a means to an end, a frantic traverse from point A to point B in metal boxes that insulate us from the world. But for the early human, travel was not an event. It was a state of being. We are, in our deepest architecture, a species designed for the road. We are the endurance wanderers of the animal kingdom, the nomads who conquered the planet not with speed, but with a relentless, rhythmic persistence. Picture the group as they leave the sanctuary of the campsite. They do not burst forth with the explosive energy of a hunting pack of wild dogs. There is no sprinting, no adrenaline-fueled dash. Instead, there is a collective easing into motion. It is a slow hydraulic shift, a liquid procession that pours itself out into the sea of grass. They fan out, maintaining a loose formation that balances the need for solitude with the safety of the group. Watch the mechanics of this movement. It is a miracle of bioengineering that took millions of years to perfect. The human stride is a unique act of controlled falling. With every step, the ancestor tips their center of gravity forward, inviting gravity to pull them down, only to catch themselves at the last possible microsecond with the swinging leg. It is a perpetual cycle of imbalance and recovery, a dangerous gamble with the earth that we have mastered so completely that we no longer notice the risk. This gait is the inverted pendulum. It is the most energy-efficient way to move across a flat landscape ever devised by nature. Unlike the chimp, who burns calories furiously to waddle on two legs, or the gazelle, who bounds with high-energy springs, the human walks with a rolling economy. We are the masters of the slow burn. We can walk for hours, for days, for weeks, on a handful of tubers and a strip of dried meat. This efficiency was our first superpower. It allowed us to outlast the drought, to cross the desert, to follow the herds until they collapsed from exhaustion. Focus your mind's eye on the feet that make contact with the earth. In the history of life, the human foot is a radical innovation, a piece of sculpture carved by the demands of the ground. Gone is the grasping thumb of our arboreal past, the hand-like foot that allowed our ancestors to swing through the canopy. In its place is a platform. The toes have shortened, aligning in a neat row to provide a push-off lever. The heel has swelled into a heavy, shock-absorbing bulb, capable of taking the impact of the body's weight thousands of times a day. But the true genius of the foot lies in the arch. It is a spring of bone and ligament, a bridge that spans the distance between the heel and the ball. With every step, this arch collapses slightly, absorbing the energy of the impact, and then snaps back, returning that energy to the stride. It is a silent, internal propulsion system. And the sole of the foot, think of the texture of it. It was not the soft, pampered skin of the modern shoe wearer. It was a leathered map of every mile traveled, a callous shield that negotiated the truce between the soft flesh and the hard geology of the Rift Valley. Yet, despite this toughness, the foot was a sensory organ. It read the texture of the ground with the fidelity of a blind man reading Braille. The snap of a hidden twig, the give of soft mud indicating a hidden spring, the vibration of a herd moving miles away. This data traveled from the soul, up the spine, and into the brain, informing every decision. To walk was to read. The earth was a manuscript, and the feet were the eyes that scanned its pages. As the tribe moves, they enter the tall grass. In the wet season, this grass could be waist-high, a shimmering ocean of green and gold. Here, the advantage of our strange, upright posture becomes obvious. We are the watchers above the waves. By standing on two legs, we lifted our eyes away from the ground and placed them 5 feet in the air. We gained the horizon. This change in perspective rewired our brains. A 4-legged creature lives in a world of sense and immediate obstacles. An upright human lives in a world of distant possibilities. They could see the vulture circling 3 miles away, signaling a carcass. They could see the storm clouds gathering over the mountains. They could see the leopard stalking through the scrub. This visual dominance turned us into planners. We stopped reacting to the now and started anticipating the next. But this height came with a terrible vulnerability. To see is to be seen. An upright human is a silhouette against the sky, a beacon to every predator on the savannah. We lost the ability to hide in the low brush. We traded camouflage for information. And so the great walking was never a casual stroll. It was a state of low-level, high-stakes vigilance. Watch their heads as they walk. They are on a constant swivel. The eyes, set in the front of the skull for binocular vision, scan the pattern of the landscape. They are looking for the break in the pattern. The human brain is a pattern-matching machine, evolved to ignore the chaos of the swaying grass and lock onto the anomaly. The patch of turned earth that suggests a tuber, the flash of unnatural color that suggests a snake or a fruit, the stillness that suggests a crouching cat. This walking was a flow state. It was not the boredom we experience on a treadmill. It was a deep, meditative engagement with the environment. The rhythm of the step induced a rhythm of the mind. The repetitive motion soothed the nervous system, allowing the brain to drift into a state of open awareness. This is why, even today, we pace when we need to think. We are trying to access the ancient cognitive gear that couples movement with insight. The best ideas of the Pleistocene were likely born not around the fire, but on the move, in the silence of the stride. Among the walkers, there is a specific burden that defines the human story: the weight of the child. Look closely at the women of the group. In the animal kingdom, most babies can walk within hours of birth. A foal stumbles to its legs and runs, but the human infant is born helpless, a fetus outside the womb, expelled early because our brains grew too large to pass through the pelvis if we waited any longer. This is the obstetrical dilemma, and so the child must be carried. This necessity sparked one of the greatest unrecognized inventions of the prehistoric world: the sling. We often laud the stone axe or the spear, but the sling, a strip of softened antelope hide or woven plant fibers, was the tool that allowed us to keep moving. Without it, the mother is grounded, her arms occupied, her ability to forage crippled. With it, the infant is bound to her body, weight distributed across the shoulders or hips. This swaying motion, the rhythmic rocking of the mother's walk, became the first lullaby. The human infant is hardwired to calm down when carried in motion. It is a survival reflex. A crying baby on the move attracts predators, so the motion of walking acts as a silencer. The mother moves through the heat, 40 pounds of child and supplies strapped to her, her endurance testing the limits of biology. She is the engine of the species. Her walking is an act of defiance against the harsh economics of survival. As the sun climbs higher, the heat begins to shimmer off the hardpan. The African savannah turns into a furnace. Most animals retreat. The lions pant in the shade of the acacia. The gazelles stand motionless under the trees. But the humans keep walking. This is our window of opportunity. We are the only cooling towers on the plains. We lost our fur to win the midday. As the temperature rises, the millions of sweat glands on our skin open. We are bathed in a sheen of moisture that evaporates in the dry air, pulling heat away from the core. We have a portable air conditioning system. This allowed our ancestors to forage and hunt when the competition was asleep. We walked into the heat, into the time of day that belonged to no one else. The great walking was a conquest of the thermal gap. But the walk is not unbroken. It is punctuated by the pause. The procession stops. A hand goes up. The group freezes. The leader points to a patch of scrub. To the untrained eye, it looks like weeds. To the encyclopedia of the Paleolithic mind, it is dinner. This is the foraging mind at work. The walk is a search algorithm. They do not wander aimlessly. They are navigating a mental map of staggering complexity. They remember that this specific gully holds water in the dry season. They remember that this grove of trees fruits in the third moon after the rains. They remember that the bees hive in the cracks of that specific cliff face. The group descends on the patch. The walking sticks, simple, fire-hardened branches, are driven into the earth. This is the digging. The rhythm of the feet is replaced by the rhythm of the arms. They unearth tubers, ugly, dirt-encrusted roots that are packed with starch. They find beetles, lizards, birds' eggs. This is not the specialized hunting of the later eras. This is the opportunistic omnivory that kept us alive. It is a conversation with the earth. The earth hides its calories, and we use our wits and our hands to find them. The hands, freed from the duty of walking, are the heroes of this scene. Because we walk on two legs, our hands are liberated to gesture, to carry, to dig, to hold. Watch how they interact. A woman finds a cluster of berries. She does not eat them all. She calls out, a soft hoot or a whistle. The others gather. The food is shared. The walking party is a mobile redistribution network. The find of one is the sustenance of all. There is a social texture to this migration. The silence of the hunt is not required here. As they walk, they talk. It is a low, rolling murmur of language. This is where the culture is maintained. The walking time is the gossip time, the teaching time. A father points to a track in the dust and explains it to his son. Hyena, old, lame. He mimics the limp. The son watches, absorbing the lesson. The landscape is the classroom. The curriculum is survival. We must also imagine the hardships of the road. The great walking was not a pastoral idyll. There were thorns that pierced the calloused soles, causing infections that could kill. There were twisted ankles that meant being left behind, or slowing the whole group down, a choice that carried heavy moral weight. There was the constant, nagging thirst. The human body leaks water. We are inefficient canteens. The route of the walk was always a tether to the nearest water hole. The mental map was, above all, a hydrological map. And there was the fear of the long grass. As they moved through areas where the visibility dropped, the group would tighten. The mothers would move to the center. The males with the heavy sticks would move to the perimeter. They would tap the grass as they walked, flushing out snakes. The great walking was a defensive formation. They moved like a single organism, a multi-legged creature with 20 eyes and 20 spears. Sometimes the walking was a silent stalking. This is the persistence hunt. It is a specialized form of the walk that deserves its own cinematic focus. Imagine a kudu bull, magnificent and fast. The humans cannot outrun it, but they can outwalk it. They spook it. It runs. They track it at a steady jog. It stops to rest. They arrive. It runs again. This dance continues for hours under the baking sun. The animal overheats. It cannot sweat. The humans sweat and keep coming. Eventually, the magnificent beast collapses, not from a wound, but from heat exhaustion. We walked it to death. We are the terminators of the ecosystem, the things that never stop coming. But mostly, the day was spent in the gentle, meandering foraging trek. The miles accumulated, 5 miles, 10 miles. The landscape shifted slowly around them, from open grass to scrubland to riverine forest. They were crossing ecological boundaries, and with each boundary their diet changed, their behavior changed. They were adaptable. They were fluid. As the afternoon wears on, the shadows begin to lengthen again. The sun loses its punishing edge. The great walking begins to slow. The energy of the group changes. They are no longer scanning for food, they are scanning for home. They are looking for the night's shelter, the rock overhang, the defensible hill. The return journey, or the arrival at a new camp, carries a different emotional weight. The bodies are tired, the legs feel heavy, the lactic acid building in the muscles. The infants in the slings are asleep, lulled by hours of rhythmic motion. The baskets are heavy with roots and fruit. The water skins are sloshing. There is a sense of completion. Reflect for a moment on the sheer distance covered. By the time a paleo-human reached the age of 20, they had likely walked the circumference of the earth. They had walked across continents. This restlessness is what drove us out of Africa. It is what pushed us across the land bridge to the Americas. It is what pushed us into the frozen north. We are the species that could not sit still. We walked until we ran out of land, and then we built boats to walk on the water. This legacy lives in your bones today. When you feel the urge to go for a long walk to clear your head, you are answering the call of the Pleistocene. When you feel a sense of peace looking at a trail winding into the distance, you are feeling the great walking. We were not meant to be sedentary. We were not meant to sit in chairs for 12 hours a day. Our spines, our hips, our knees, they are all engineered for the road. The back pain of modern life is the scream of a body denied its primary function. As the sun begins to touch the western horizon, painting the sky in violent oranges and reds, the walking stops. The group finds their place. The heavy loads are dropped. The silence of the motion is replaced by the groans of relief. The feet, the heroes of the day, are inspected. Thorns are pulled out. Mud is scraped off. They have carried the future of humanity another 10 miles. The great walking is over for the day. But it is never truly finished. It is the fundamental rhythm of our existence. We are the pilgrims of the planet, the walkers who woke up one morning and decided to see what lay beyond the horizon. And in that decision, in that first step, we left the animal kingdom behind and walked into history. Consider the Laetoli footprints, those solidified echoes in the volcanic ash of Tanzania, dated to 3.7 million years ago. 2 trails, one large, one small, perhaps a parent and child. They are walking side by side. The larger footprints show a deep heel strike and a strong push-off from the big toe. The smaller ones trot alongside, perhaps pausing, perhaps turning to look at something. This image captures the essence of the great walking. It was not a solitary march of conquest. It was a family outing. It was a shared journey. The dust rising from their heels is the same dust that coats our shoes today. The rhythm of their breathing is the rhythm of our own. Deep within the genetic code, there is a gene for migration, a wanderlust allele. It is not present in everyone, but it is present in many. It is the chemical signature of the ancestors who kept walking when others stopped. It is the ghost of the horizon calling out. As the twilight settles and the first stars appear, the navigation markers of the night, the legs may be still, but the mind is still moving. It is replaying the path. It is memorizing the landmarks. The twisted tree, the white rock, the dry riverbed. The landscape has been internalized. We have swallowed the world with our eyes and our feet. The great walking is more than locomotion. It is a way of knowing. To walk the land is to know the land. To drive through it is to watch a movie. To walk it is to be in the play. Our ancestors were the ultimate actors on the ultimate stage, performing a daily improvisation of survival that required endurance, wit, and an unshakable faith in the strength of their own legs. So tonight, as you drift toward sleep, imagine the feeling of the earth beneath your bare feet. Imagine the rhythm of the stride. Left, right, left, right. A pendulum swinging in time with the heartbeat of the world. Imagine the tall grass brushing against your thighs. You are not stuck in a room. You are part of the procession. You are one of the walkers, moving slowly, inevitably, beautifully, across the endless savannah of time. The road is long, but you were built for it. If we were to direct the camera of our imagination back through the deep corridors of time, scrolling past the rise of empires, the building of pyramids, and the first planting of seeds, we would eventually arrive at the pristine, terrifying wilderness of the Pleistocene. In the popular imagination, fueled by frantic action movies and violent video games, this era is defined by kinetic energy. We picture our ancestors in a perpetual state of adrenaline, sprinting across the savannah with spears raised, wrestling saber-toothed cats, or fleeing from erupting volcanoes. We see them as creatures of chaotic motion, defined by the sweat of the chase and the blood of the kill. But the fossil record, the silent testimony of the bones, and the quiet wisdom of the few remaining hunter-gatherer societies whisper a very different, far more profound truth. The defining characteristic of early human life was not speed, it was stillness. The day of an ancient human was not a marathon of exertion, but a masterpiece of patience. It was a life lived largely in the pause, in the suspension of movement, in a state of waiting so intense and so disciplined that it defies the modern comprehension of time. Picture, if you will, the edge of a dense, primeval forest in what is now northern Europe, during an interglacial period where the cold has retreated just enough to allow the oaks and birches to reclaim the tundra. The light here is dappled, filtered through a canopy of ancient green, casting shifting patterns on the forest floor. In the center of a dense thicket of ferns, there is a shape that does not belong, yet belongs entirely. It is a man, but he does not look like a man. He has become a statue of mud and shadow. He has been sitting there for 4 hours. He has not moved a muscle. His legs are folded beneath him, a posture that would send sharp needles of pain through the limbs of a modern office worker, but his joints are adapted to the earth, his tendons lengthened by a lifetime of squatting. He is covered in a thick layer of wet clay, smeared over his skin to mask the scent of sweat, to hide the oils of the human body, and to break up the silhouette of the predator. He is a ghost in the machine of the ecosystem. This stillness is not the relaxation of a Sunday afternoon. It is an active, burning state of being. It is a biological weapon. Every fiber of his being is engaged in the act of non-motion. Consider the sheer physical discipline required to ignore the itch of a biting fly landing on the eyelid. Consider the mental fortitude required to suppress the cough that tickles the throat, or to ignore the cramp developing in the calf. This ability to inhibit reaction, to override the body's natural desire to fidget, was a neurological breakthrough. It was the triumph of the mind over the reflex. In this thicket, the human brain is commanding the animal body to freeze, to become inorganic, to become stone. This stillness was born of necessity. The weapons of the Paleolithic, the wooden spear, the flint-tipped javelin, and later the bow, were short-range instruments. We did not have the crushing jaws of the hyena or the explosive speed of the cheetah. To kill, we had to get close. We had to close the gap between the hunter and the hunted to within 10 or 20 meters. In the open wild, where every prey animal is equipped with ears that swivel like radar dishes and noses that can smell fear on the wind, closing that gap is impossible through movement alone. The only way to get close is to let the prey come to you. And so, the hunter became the ambush predator. This strategy required a fundamental rewiring of our perception of time. The hunter had to surrender his schedule to the schedule of the forest. He had to enter a trance state, a hunter's zen, where the passage of minutes and hours dissolved into a single, continuous moment of presence. This was the art of stillness. It was a form of deep meditation, but unlike the monk seeking enlightenment, the hunter was seeking dinner. The stakes were absolute, but do not mistake this physical immobility for mental passivity. While the body was frozen, the mind was running a marathon. Inside the skull of that silent figure, a storm of cognitive activity was raging. This was an intense, high-calorie cognitive workout. The brain, consuming 20% of the body's energy, was fully online, processing a torrent of sensory data that would overwhelm a modern human. He is watching the wind. To us, wind is a sensation on the skin. To him, it is a conveyor belt of information. He watches the leaves of the birch tree 50 yards away. They shift, turning their silver undersides up. The wind has changed direction. This is critical data. If the wind blows from him toward the game trail, his scent will travel like a siren, clearing the forest for a mile. He must calculate the fluid dynamics of the air, adjusting his position by inches, slow as a glacier, to keep his scent cone contained. He is listening, but he is not just hearing. He is filtering. The forest is a cacophony of noise, the rustle of rodents, the drone of insects, the creak of trees. The hunter's brain is performing a complex audio engineering task, suppressing the white noise of the harmless background and amplifying the signal of the anomaly. He is waiting for the specific snap of a dry twig that is too heavy to be a squirrel. He is listening for the alarm call of a jay, the specific squawk that means intruder on the ground. He knows the language of the birds better than he knows the language of his own children. The birds are his surveillance system, his eyes in the sky. And most profoundly, he is engaging in projective simulation. In the silence of the wait, the human mind began to do something that no other mind on Earth could do with such complexity. It began to simulate the future. The hunter is not just seeing the empty trail, he is hallucinating the deer that is not yet there. He is visualizing the animal's path. He is asking, if I were a red deer, thirsty and wary, how would I approach this clearing? This is the birth of theory of mind, the ability to attribute mental states to others. To catch the animal, the hunter had to become the animal. He had to cast his consciousness out of his own body and into the imaginary body of the prey. He had to feel the thirst of the gazelle, the caution of the boar. In this deep, empathetic silence, the boundary between human and nature began to blur. The hunter felt a profound spiritual intimacy with the creature he intended to kill. This was not a hateful act. It was a relationship. It was a marriage of minds before the violence of the spear. This cognitive leap, the ability to sit still and imagine the mind of another, is the root of all human storytelling, all human empathy. If you can imagine what a deer is thinking, you can imagine what your neighbor is thinking. You can imagine what a spirit is thinking. The long, silent hours of the ambush were the incubator for the human soul. It was in the boredom, in the emptiness of the wait, that the imagination was forced to stretch, filling the void with ghosts, with plans, with gods. However, there is an economic reality to this stillness as well. We must look at the art of stillness through the cold lens of thermodynamics. The prehistoric world was a calorie-restricted environment. Energy was the currency of life, and inflation was high. Every step taken was a calorie burned. Every sprint was a depletion of the glycogen reserves that might not be replenished for days. We are, biologically, an expensive machine to run. Our massive brains are energy hogs. To support this expensive neural infrastructure, the body had to become ruthless about efficiency. Evolution taught us a simple lesson. Never move unless you have to. The lazy human was the surviving human, the ancestor who ran around aimlessly, burning energy on anxiety or unnecessary labor, starved to death. The ancestor who could sit by the fire for 6 hours, or lie in the shade of the acacia tree doing absolutely nothing, was conserving the fuel needed for the critical moment of the hunt. This creates a beautiful evolutionary duality. We are capable of the persistence hunt, running down an antelope for 20 miles. But we are also the champions of the siesta. We are built for extremes, explosive endurance, and profound lethargy. The stillness of the day was the battery charging phase. It was a survival strategy to lower the metabolic rate, to cool the body, to repair the micro tears in the muscles. Imagine the scene back at the camp, in the heat of the African afternoon, long before the migration to the cold north. The sun is a tyrant, hammering the savannah with ultraviolet radiation. To move is to overheat. And so the tribe engages in the collective art of doing nothing. Bodies are draped over one another in the shade of a rock overhang. There is no talking. There is no work. There is just the slow rhythm of breathing. But look closely at their eyes. They are not asleep. They are in a state of soft fascination. They are watching the clouds drift and dissolve. They are watching the termites build a mound. They are watching the way the light changes on the distant hills. In this downtime, the brain is still working, but it is working in the default mode network, the neurological state associated with daydreaming, memory consolidation, and creativity. It is likely that in these long periods of stillness, the great innovations of humanity were born. It is hard to invent a complex tool while you are running for your life. It is hard to conceive of a complex social structure while you are butchering a carcass. But in the silence of the afternoon, or the long wait in the blind, the mind wanders. It connects unrelated ideas. What if I tied the sharp stone to the end of the stick? What if we moved to the valley where the sun sets? The stillness provided the canvas upon which the human intellect painted its first abstract thoughts. Let us return to the hunter in the thicket. The sun has moved. The shadows have shifted. His leg is asleep, a dead weight of pins and needles, but he does not shift. He knows that the golden hour is approaching, dusk, the time when the forest exhales and the creatures move to water. Suddenly, the quality of the silence changes. To the untrained ear, nothing has happened. But the hunter feels a subtle vibration in the ground. The birds in the canopy above stop singing, a silence hole that moves through the forest, tracking the predator or the large prey. His heart rate, which has been resting at a yogic slow rhythm for hours, begins to climb. But he forces it down. He breathes through his nose, slow, controlled. If he panics now, if he floods his blood with adrenaline too early, his hands will shake. He needs the steady hands of a surgeon. A shape materializes from the gloom. It is a red deer stag, magnificent, crowned with antlers that look like oak branches. It moves with a jerky, paranoid grace. Step, freeze, listen, step. The hunter is now a part of the tree. He does not look directly at the stag, knowing that a direct stare can be felt. He looks with his peripheral vision. He waits. He waits for the animal to turn its head, to look away for the fraction of a second required to draw the bow or raise the spear. This moment is the culmination of the hours of stillness. It is the singularity where patience transforms into action. The release of the arrow is not an act of aggression, but the final note in a long, silent symphony of observation. The violence, when it comes, is swift, brutal, and necessary. But it was bought with the currency of stillness. Transitioning from the hunt to the domestic sphere, the art of stillness was equally vital for the survival of the vulnerable. Consider the infants and the elderly. In a world of lions, leopards, and wolves, a crying baby is a dinner bell. A coughing elder is a beacon. And so, we learned the discipline of silence from birth. Mothers in the Paleolithic carried their infants constantly, skin to skin. This constant contact regulated the baby's heartbeat and breathing, keeping them calm. But there were moments, hiding in a cave while a predator prowled outside or waiting for a hostile tribe to pass, where absolute silence was the difference between life and extinction. We can imagine the mother, her hand gently cupped over the infant's mouth, her eyes wide in the dark, transmitting a chemical signal of fear and caution to the child. Be still. Be quiet. This trauma, this need to hide, is etched into our biology. It is why, when we are truly terrified, our instinct is to freeze. The fight or flight response is actually freeze, flight, or fight. Freezing is the oldest defense. It is the hope that if we remain perfectly still, the eye of the monster will slide over us, mistaking us for a rock or a log. We are the descendants of the ones who were best at playing dead, the ones who could hold their breath the longest in the dark. Furthermore, this stillness allowed for a deep, intimate connection with the landscape that we have largely lost. The modern human moves through the world like a tourist, viewing nature as scenery. The ancient human was nature. By sitting still for hours, they saw the secret life of the world. They saw the beetle fighting the ant. They saw the flower open. They saw the stars rotate. This observation led to knowledge. You cannot understand the medicinal properties of a plant by glancing at it. You must sit with it, watch its life cycle, see which animals eat it and which avoid it. You cannot understand the migration of the birds by seeing them once. You must watch the sky for seasons. The scientific method of the Stone Age was observation over deep time. The library of knowledge that kept them alive, the mental map of every root, every waterhole, every seasonal change, was built during these periods of stillness. There is a melancholy in this realization. We look at our modern lives, defined by the attention economy. We are bombarded by notifications, lights, sounds, and demands. We are terrified of boredom. If we have to wait for a bus for 2 minutes, we pull out a screen to distract us. We have lost the ability to simply be. We have lost the art of the pause. But deep within our marrow, the capacity for stillness remains. It is a dormant superpower. You feel it when you sit by a campfire and find yourself staring into the flames for an hour, thinking of nothing and everything. You feel it when you are fishing, watching the bobber on the water, the rest of the world falling away. You feel it in the moments before sleep, when the body finally uncurls and the mind begins to drift. The art of stillness is not just a hunting tactic. It is the baseline state of the human soul. It is the place where we recharge, where we connect, and where we understand. Our ancestors did not conquer the world by running. They conquered it by waiting. They outwaited the ice. They outwaited the drought. They sat in the dark, guarding the fire, listening to the breathing of the earth. And they endured. As the day in the life of our ancestor winds down, the stillness takes on a new quality. The camp settles for the night. The work is done. The tools are laid aside. The fire is built up against the returning cold. The tribe sits. They do not need to speak. They share a companionable silence, a concept we still cherish. To sit with another person and not feel the need to fill the air with words is the ultimate sign of trust. It says, I am safe with you. We are safe here. This evening, stillness is the closing bracket of the day. The hunter who spent hours in the thicket is now melting back into the humanity of the group. His muscles, tight from the discipline of the wait, are relaxing in the warmth. He looks up at the stars, the same stars that wheeled over him while he hid in the mud. He is no longer the predator. He is just a man, small beneath the infinite canopy of the cosmos. And in that silence, surrounded by the breathing of his kin, the legacy of the day is solidified. The patience of the hunt becomes the patience of survival. The stillness of the body becomes the resilience of the species. We are the watchers. We are the waiters. And in the quiet, we find ourselves. So, as you lie in the dark tonight, seeking your own rest, remember that your inability to settle, your racing mind, is just a modern layer of noise over an ancient foundation of peace. You are built for stillness. You have the hardware of a master observer. Let the world slow down. Let the white noise of the day fade. Become the statue in the forest. Watch the wind. Listen to the silence. And wait, with the infinite patience of your ancestors, for the peace of sleep to come to you. The story of the human body is not just a story of muscle and bone in motion. It is a story of the pauses between the beats. It is in the empty spaces that the music of our evolution is truly played. And it was in the art of stillness that we first learned to hear it. The great golden eye of the Pleistocene sun reaches its zenith, and the world beneath it undergoes a profound transformation. The morning, with its crisp blue promise and its biting chill, is a distant memory. The sky, once a soft dome of violet and rose, has hardened into a sheet of polished turquoise, bright and unrelenting. As the celestial orb climbs to the highest point of its arc, the African landscape turns into a furnace. The heat does not merely sit upon the land, it strikes it. It hammers the anvil of the earth until the air itself begins to buckle and warp. Look out across the savannah through the lens of deep time. The horizon, usually a sharp line dividing earth from sky, is now liquid. Heat haze shimmers off the baking hardpan, creating phantom lakes and distorting the shapes of distant acacia trees until they look like floating islands. The silence of the midday is different from the silence of the night or the dawn. It is a heavy, oppressive silence. The birds have ceased their singing, retreating into the deep brush with beaks open, panting. The insect's hum has risen to a frantic, high-pitched whine that seems to vibrate inside the skull. The wind dies down, as if the atmosphere itself is too exhausted to move. In this crucible of noon, the imperative of survival shifts. The drive to hunt, to gather, to explore, is overridden by a more primal command: thermal homeostasis. We are creatures of the tropics, born of the heat, yet we are paradoxically vulnerable to it. We are the naked apes, the ones who shed our fur to run, but in doing so, we exposed our skin to the punishing ultraviolet radiation of the equator. And so, as the temperature climbs past the point of comfort, crossing into the zone of danger where proteins denature and the brain begins to cook, the tribe obeys the law of the sun. They retreat. This is the hour of the midday retreat. It is a migration measured not in miles but in meters, a movement from the blinding brightness of the open plain to the sanctuary of the shadow. Watch them as they move. The rhythmic walking of the morning slows. The posture changes, heads lower against the glare. They seek the islands of darkness in a sea of light. For some, the sanctuary is the mouth of a cave, a limestone throat that breathes out cool, damp air from the earth's interior. Stepping into such a cave from the midday sun is a sensory shock: the sudden drop in temperature, the smell of wet stone and bat guano, the instant relief of the skin. For others, on the open move, the sanctuary is the cathedral of the thorn, the sprawling, umbrella-shaped canopy of a mature acacia tree. Imagine the tribe gathering beneath such a tree. Its branches spread wide, a fractal network of thorns and tiny leaves that filter the brutal sunlight into a soft, dappled mosaic of gold and green. The ground beneath is carpeted with dry pods and dust, but it is cool. The temperature difference between the sun and the shade can be 20 degrees. To step across that shadow line is to step from a hostile planet onto a habitable one. The activity of the morning ceases abruptly. There is no setting up of camp, no intricate tool-making, no butchering. The heat dictates passivity. The world slows down. the frame rate of existence dropping to a languid crawl. The tribe collapses. This is not a collapse of defeat, but of biological necessity. Bodies sprawl onto the cooler earth, finding the depressions in the soil that fit the curve of a hip or a shoulder. Here, we witness a scene of profound intimacy and vulnerability, the heap of kinship. In the modern world, we value personal space. We construct walls and sleep in isolation. But our ancestors lived in a state of constant physical contact. As they settle for the midday rest, they do not space themselves out. They entangle. An arm is thrown over a neighbor's flank. A head rests on a thigh. An infant curls into the curve of a stomach. This pile of humanity serves a dual purpose. Socially, it reinforces the bonds of the group through the release of oxytocin, the chemical of connection. But physically, it is a safety mechanism. Even in sleep, the touch of another body is a signal. I am here. You are not alone. If danger comes, I will wake you. This was a time of suspended animation. The siesta is often derided in our hyper-productive modern era as a sign of laziness, a vice of the unmotivated. But let us correct the record. The midday sleep is an evolutionary adaptation as vital as the thumb or the upright spine. We are biphasic sleepers. Our circadian rhythms, the ancient clocks ticking in our blood, are hardwired to dip in the early afternoon. This is not a failure of energy. It is a programmed maintenance cycle. Consider the physiology of the resting hunter. As the man lies back against the roots of the tree, his breathing shifts. The short, sharp breaths of the trek deepen into long, slow, rhythmic draws. His heart, which had been pumping furiously to move blood to the working muscles, slows its cadence. The blood vessels in his skin, dilated to release heat, remain open, allowing the cooler air of the shade to pull the fever of the sun from his blood. The sweat that slicks his forehead begins to dry, leaving a crust of salt, the mineral cost of survival. This downtime was essential for recovery. The human body is a machine that accumulates damage. The micro tears in the muscle fibers from walking, the buildup of adenosine in the brain, the depletion of glycogen in the liver, all these debts must be paid. The midday retreat was the payment. It allowed the body to repair itself before the demands of the evening hunt. Without this pause, the human engine would seize up. But the retreat was not just a physical shutting down. It was a unique state of consciousness. It was a time to do absolutely nothing. In our modern lexicon, doing nothing is synonymous with wasting time. We fill every pause with a screen, a podcast, a task. We fear boredom as if it were a predator. But for the early human, boredom did not exist. There was only being. Picture a young woman lying on her back, her eyes half open. She is not asleep, but she is not fully awake. She is in the hypnagogic borderland, that fluid space between reality and the dream. She watches the clouds drift across the frame of the acacia leaves. She sees a cumulus formation that looks like a buffalo. She sees another that looks like a skull. Her mind is drifting, untethered from the immediate need to survive. This mental wandering is the function of the default mode network in the brain. When we stop focusing on a task, this network lights up. It is the seat of autobiography, of future planning, of imagination. In the silence of the midday heat, while her body cooled, her mind was knitting together the tapestry of her life. She was processing the sensory data of the morning, the track of the python she saw by the river, the new patch of tubers, the tension between two males in the group. The brain was filing these memories, moving them from the short-term volatile storage to the long-term archives. The stillness of the afternoon was the incubator of human intelligence. It was in these quiet, shimmering hours that the connections were made. The solution to a problem, how to nap the flint so it doesn't shatter where the herd might be moving, often arrives not when we are straining for it, but when we let go. The great idea likely struck our ancestor not in the fury of the chase, but in the drowsy silence of the siesta. The sensory details of this environment are distinct and overpowering. The smell of the shade is different from the smell of the sun. It smells of dust, yes, but also of dry grass, of the musk of resting bodies, and the faint, sweet scent of the acacia sap. The soundscape is stripped back. The roar of the wind is gone. The only sounds are the rhythmic breathing of the clan, the occasional snap of a dry twig as someone shifts, and the relentless high-frequency drill of the cicadas, a sound that becomes so constant it fades into silence. There is also the sensation of thirst. The midday is the time of dry mouths. Water is heavy. It cannot be carried in endless supply. They must ration it. The hunger and thirst are present, but the heat suppresses the appetite. The body does not want to digest. Digestion generates heat, so they lie in a state of metabolic suspension, waiting for the sun to lose its anger. We must also consider the vulnerability of this moment. A sleeping tribe is a vulnerable tribe. Though the great predators, the lions and leopards, are also likely sleeping in the shade, the danger never truly vanishes. And so the retreat is never total. There is always a sentinel. Usually it is a young male, or perhaps an older woman whose joints ache too much for deep sleep. They sit a little apart from the pile, leaning against the rock or the tree trunk. Their eyes are heavy-lidded, fighting the crushing weight of the heat-induced drowsiness. They are the guardians of the dreamers. They scan the shimmering horizon, looking for the telltale dust cloud of a stampede or the low silhouette of a creeping hyena. This duty, the watch, is a sacred trust. To fall asleep is to betray the kin. The sentinel watches the passage of time not by a watch, but by the shadow of the tree. As the sun moves across the sky, the shadow rotates, a giant sundial cast upon the earth. The tribe must shift with it. It is a slow, unconscious dance. As the patch of sun encroaches on a sleeping leg, the sleeper pulls it back, rolling deeper into the shade without ever fully waking. The group migrates across the ground in inches, chasing the relief of the dark. This shared repose creates a profound psychological bond. There is a specific kind of trust required to close your eyes in the presence of others. It says, "I trust you with my life." In the silence of the afternoon, the social hierarchy softens. The dominant male sleeps beside the lowest-ranking member. In sleep, all are equal. The bickering stops. The politics of the tribe are suspended. They are simply a biomass of survival, breathing in unison. Let us zoom in on the skin of these ancestors. It is a landscape of its own. It is dark, rich in melanin. A biological shield evolved to absorb the UV radiation before it can shred the DNA in the cell nuclei. It is dusty, coated in the fine red earth of the savannah. It is scarred. Here a jagged line from a thorn, there a pockmark from an insect bite. And it is glistening. Even in the shade, the skin works, the sweat glands pulsing microscopic drops of water that cool the blood. This skin is the boundary between the internal ocean of the body and the external desert of the world. As the hours drag on, the quality of the light begins to change. The blinding white gold of noon softens to a yellow gold. The heat loses its sharp edge. The air begins to stir again, a small breeze picking up the dust. The midday retreat is nearing its end. The waking is as slow as the falling asleep. It is not a sudden alarm, but a ripple of consciousness. One member sits up, yawns, a wide, jaw-cracking yawn that exposes teeth worn down by grit and tough fibers. They stretch, reaching arms toward the sky, realigning the spine. They nudge a neighbor, low groans of waking, the clearing of throats. The heap of kinship begins to untangle. The energy of the camp shifts. The suspended animation breaks. The biological imperative changes from conserve to acquire. The hunger that was suppressed by the heat returns with a vengeance. The thirst becomes a demand. The minds that were drifting in the clouds snap back to the earth. The eyes that were watching the leaves now look to the horizon, planning the route to the waterhole, the strategy for the evening hunt. We carry the memory of the midday retreat in our modern bones. It is the post-lunch dip that hits every office worker at 2 p.m. We fight it with caffeine and sugar. We guilt ourselves for feeling tired. We try to power through. But our bodies are remembering the acacia tree. They are remembering the heat of the Pleistocene. They are screaming for us to stop, to find the shade, to lie down with our kin and let the world spin without us for an hour. The midday retreat was not a sign of weakness. It was a strategy of strength. It was the wisdom of knowing that you cannot fight the sun. It was the understanding that rest is not the opposite of work, but the foundation of it. Let us linger for a moment longer in the shade before the tribe moves on. There is a specific beauty in this stillness, the way a beetle crawls over a sleeping hand, undisturbed, the way the dust motes dance in the shafts of light that pierce the canopy, the way the chest of the child rises and falls against the chest of the mother. In this silence, we see the humanity of our ancestors most clearly. When they are hunting, they are predators. When they are making tools, they are engineers. But when they are sleeping in a heap in the middle of the day, they are simply a family. They are vulnerable, soft, and dependent on one another. The heat shimmer on the horizon begins to fade. The mirages vanish. The world becomes solid again. The leader of the group stands up, picks up a spear, and looks to the west. The signal is given. The retreat is over. The great walking will resume. But they move now with renewed strength, their muscles loosened, their minds cleared, their spirits knitted together by the shared sanctuary of the shade. They step out from under the tree, leaving the cool island behind, and walk back into the light. But they carry the peace of the midday with them, a reserve of calm that will sustain them through the violence and the beauty of the coming evening. The sun begins its descent, and the shadow of the human stretches long across the earth, a giant now, refreshed and ready to inherit the night. The sun begins its slow descent from the high throne of the zenith, and the white heat of the African afternoon begins to soften, shifting into the heavy amber glow of the late day. The air, which had shimmered with a mirage-like intensity, settles back into clarity. The silence of the midday retreat, that profound biological pause where the entire continent seemed to hold its breath, is gently broken by the stirring of the tribe. But this is not the jarring awakening of an alarm. It is a soft, organic unfurling, like the petals of a flower opening to the cooling breeze. The heap of kinship, the tangle of sleeping limbs and resting bodies beneath the great acacia, begins to separate. But the connection does not break. It merely changes form. We enter now into a chapter of human history written not in stone or bone, but on the canvas of the skin itself. As the lethargy of the siesta fades, the tribe does not immediately spring up to hunt or forage. There is an intermediate state, a crucial bridge between the vulnerability of sleep and the violence of survival. This is the time of the grooming. It is a ritual that consumed hours of our ancestors' days, a behavior so fundamental to our species that it predates humanity itself, reaching back into the deep primate lineage from which we emerged. But in the hands of Homo sapiens, or even our earlier kin Homo erectus, this act became something more than hygiene. It became the language of touch. Picture the scene through the lens of deep time. The light is dappled, filtering through the thorny canopy in shifting patterns of gold and shadow. A young woman sits cross-legged in the dust, her posture relaxed yet attentive. In front of her sits a male, perhaps her mate, perhaps a brother. His back is turned to her, a gesture of profound trust in a world of predators. He exposes the defenseless nape of his neck, the curve of his spine, the blind spots of his anatomy. She leans forward, her eyes narrowed in focus, her hands moving with a practiced rhythmic grace. Consider the instrument performing this ritual, the human hand. In our stories of evolution, we often fetishize the hand as the toolmaker, the gripper of the spear, the shaper of the flint. We praise the opposable thumb for its ability to manipulate the world, to build and destroy. But we forget that the hand is also a sensory organ of exquisite delicacy. The pads of the fingertips are dense with mechanoreceptors, nerve endings capable of detecting a ridge of texture no thicker than a single strand of hair. These fingerprints, these unique whorls of friction ridges, were not just designed for grip. They were designed for reading the landscape of another being. The woman's fingers move through the man's hair. It is thick, coarse hair, matted perhaps with the dust of the savannah or the soot of last night's fire. She parts the strands like a tracker parting the tall grass, searching for the hidden enemy. And the enemy is there. The Pleistocene world was a world of parasites, ticks, lice, fleas, biting flies. These were the constant, tormenting companions of early humans. They were not merely annoyances. They were vectors of disease, drainers of blood, silent killers that lived on the surface of the skin. She finds a burr, a prickly seed pod caught in the hair, digging into the scalp. With gentle precision, she works it free. She finds a tick, bloated and dark. With a swift, sharp movement of her fingernails, she removes it. This is the ostensible purpose of the ritual: hygiene. It is the cleaning of the body. But if we look closer, if we look beneath the skin to the chemistry of the brain, we see that hygiene is merely the excuse. The true purpose is the weaving of the social soul. As her fingers stroke the scalp, as she scratches the itch that he cannot reach, a powerful biological alchemy begins to take place. This is the internal drugstore of the human body opening its doors. The rhythmic stimulation of the skin triggers the release of beta endorphins in the brain. These are the body's natural opiates, chemically similar to morphine, but far more subtle and functional. They induce a mild, floating euphoria, a sense of well-being that dulls pain and dissolves anxiety. Simultaneously, the hormone oxytocin begins to flow. This is the binding molecule, the chemical signature of love, trust, and connection. It floods the neural pathways of both the groomer and the groomed. It lowers the heart rate. It reduces the levels of cortisol, the stress hormone that has been spiking all morning during the vigilance of the trek. The grooming circle becomes a bubble of pharmacological peace. In a life defined by the adrenaline of the chase and the terror of the dark, this endorphin-soaked afternoon was the ultimate sanctuary. The silence of the camp is punctuated by the sounds of this ritual. It is a quiet soundscape, intimate and reassuring. There is the rustle of hair being disturbed. There is the soft snap of a louse being crushed. And there is the sound of the mouth. In our primate cousins, and almost certainly in our early ancestors, grooming was accompanied by lip smacking, a rhythmic clicking sound made with the tongue and lips. It was a signal of benign intent, a lullaby of peace. I am grooming. I am friendly. We are one. This sound, this vocal grooming, may well be the ancestor of music, or even the ancestor of speech. Before we had complex words to navigate the treacherous waters of tribal politics, we had this tactile conversation. Imagine a conflict that occurred earlier in the day. Perhaps two males quarreled over a piece of meat, or there was tension over a sleeping spot. The adrenaline of the argument lingers in the blood. The trust is fractured. In a solitary species, this rift might lead to permanent exile or death. But humans are obligate social animals. We cannot survive alone. The rift must be healed. And so, later in the day, the aggressor approaches the victim. He does not offer an apology in words, for the concept of "I'm sorry" may not yet exist in the lexicon. Instead, he offers his shoulder. He presents his back. He initiates the grooming. The touch bridges the gap. As the fingers work the tension out of the muscles, the anger dissolves into the opioid haze. The physical act of grooming rewires the relationship, resetting the social contract. It says, without a single syllable, "We are still kin. I still need you. You are still safe with me. This ritual consumed a massive portion of the day. Anthropologists studying modern primates and hunter-gatherers estimate that our ancestors might have spent up to 20% of their waking hours grooming. Think of the cost of that time. That is time not spent hunting, not spent gathering food, not spent making tools, not spent scouting for water. In the ruthless economy of survival, where every calorie counts, why would evolution select for a behavior that wastes so much time? The answer lies in the complexity of the human mind. As our brains grew larger, our social groups grew larger. We moved from small family units to bands of 30, 50, 100. The political complexity of a group that size is staggering. To keep the peace, to know who is allied with whom, to ensure that you have support when the lion attacks, requires a constant maintenance of relationships. Grooming was the cement that held the tribe together. If the cement crumbled, the tribe crumbled. And a lone human on the Pleistocene savannah is a dead human. Thus, the time spent grooming was not a luxury, it was a survival tax, paid in minutes and strokes, to purchase the insurance of the group. Let us drift to another vignette within the shade of the acacia. Here, the dynamic is different. It is not the political grooming of adults, but the primal grooming of mother and child. A mother holds her infant across her lap. The baby is small, fragile, born too early by the standards of the animal kingdom, its brain only a fraction of its final size. The mother is cleaning the child, wiping away the dust, checking the folds of the skin. But she is doing more than cleaning. She is mapping the boundaries of the child's existence. The human infant learns where its body ends and the world begins through the touch of the mother. Her hands stimulate the myelination of the infant's nerves, encouraging the growth of the neural networks that will one day allow this child to walk, to speak, to think. The touch regulates the baby's temperature. It regulates the baby's breathing. In this interaction, we see the roots of our deepest emotional needs. We are creatures that wither without touch. A human baby, fed and watered but denied physical contact, will fail to thrive. It will fade. This biological imperative was forged here in the dust of the prehistoric afternoon. The mother's hand saying, "You exist. You are loved. You are part of me." The sensory experience of the groomer is just as profound as that of the groomed. To groom another is to enter a state of flow. It is a repetitive, meditative task. The eyes focus on the small details, the texture of the skin, the pattern of the hair growth. The world narrows down to a square inch of flesh. The worries of the horizon fade. There is a deep satisfaction in the hunt for the parasite, a primitive gratification in finding the tick and removing the threat. It is a micro-hunt, a way of asserting control over the environment on a microscopic scale. And there is the texture of the skin itself. Human skin is unique. Unlike the thick pelt of the chimpanzee or the wolf, our skin is largely naked, covered only by fine, vellus hair. This nakedness makes us incredibly sensitive. We are a giant sensory receptor. A breeze can be felt on the arm. A fly can be felt landing on the leg. This sensitivity made grooming an intensely pleasurable experience. The scratching of a fingernail on the back is not just a relief, it is a neurological event. It sends a cascade of signals up the spine, lighting up the pleasure centers of the brain. This nakedness also made us vulnerable. We have no claws, no fangs, no armor. Our skin is soft. It tears easily. It burns in the sun. It freezes in the wind. Because we are physically vulnerable, we must be socially invincible. The language of touch was the armor we built out of each other. By grooming, we were constantly reminding ourselves that we were part of a larger organism. The skin of the tribe was the true hide. The individual was just a cell. As the afternoon wears on, the grooming circles shift. The sun angle lowers, and the shade moves. The tribe scoots across the earth to stay in the shadow, never breaking the chain of touch. We might imagine a young male, barely an adult, grooming an elder. The elder's skin is loose, wrinkled like a dried riverbed, map-marked with the scars of a lifetime. A jagged line on the shoulder from a leopard's claw, healed decades ago. A burn mark from a stray ember. The young male's fingers trace these histories. This is the transmission of history through the braille of the body. The young learn the resilience of the old, not just by listening to stories, but by touching the evidence. This body survived, the scars say, and because I survived, you are here. The grooming of the elders was an act of respect, a payment for wisdom. In many animal species, the old and weak are left behind. In humans, they are cared for. They are groomed. Their hair is combed even when they can no longer hunt. This tenderness towards the non-productive members of the tribe is one of the defining marks of our humanity. But let us not romanticize this into a perfect utopia. The grooming circle was also a place of hierarchy and exclusion. Who grooms whom matters. In the strict pecking order of the group, the subordinates often groom the dominants. A lower-ranking male might spend hours grooming the alpha, hoping to buy favor, hoping to be allowed near the meat at the next kill. The alpha accepts this tribute with a languid entitlement, perhaps grooming the subordinate for a few token minutes in return. The language of touch had its own grammar of power. To be groomed was to be served. To groom was to serve. And there were those on the periphery, the outcast, the individual who had violated a norm, or who was socially awkward or sick. To be excluded from the grooming circle was a devastating punishment. It was a form of social death. To sit alone, watching the others interlocked in the endorphin haze of connection, with no one to pick the ticks from your back, no one to stroke your hair, this was the ultimate isolation. It meant you were outside the protection of the group. The cold shoulder was a literal coldness. Without the warmth of the bodies, without the stress reduction of the touch, the immune system of the outcast would weaken. Loneliness in the Pleistocene was a fatal disease. As the shadows lengthen into the true evening, the nature of the grooming changes. The intensity slows. The midday retreat is officially over, and the hunger of the evening begins to stir. But the tribe is different now than it was before the sleep. They are chemically synchronized. They have been tuned to one another. The aggression levels are low. The cooperation levels are high. They are ready to coordinate for the hunt. The transition from grooming to action is fluid. The mother gives her child one last pat and places him in the sling. The male gives the shoulder of his partner a firm slap, a gesture that survives to this day in locker rooms and playing fields, and stands up, reaching for his spear. The hands that were just moments ago gentle instruments of comfort become once again the gripping claws of the predator. But the memory of the touch remains on the skin. The phantom sensation of fingers in the hair, the residual warmth of the contact, stays with them as they walk out into the cooling plains. It serves as a tether. When the hunter is alone in the bush, waiting for the prey, the memory of that grooming creates a psychological safety net. He knows he has a place to return to. He knows he is valued. We must also consider the evolutionary trajectory of this behavior. As our language centers developed, as the Broca's area and Wernicke's area of the brain expanded, the nature of grooming began to shift. We started to replace the physical stroke with the verbal stroke. We began to groom with words. Gossip, small talk, the exchanging of pleasantries, these are the modern descendants of picking lice. "How are you?" is the vocal equivalent of checking for ticks. It serves the same function, maintaining the bond, checking the status of the relationship, ensuring the network is intact. But the word never fully replaced the hand. We still live in the shadow of that ancient acacia tree. When we are truly grief-stricken, words fail us, and we reach out to hold. When we meet a friend, we shake hands or hug. When we are in love, we crave the caress. The skin hunger is a real physiological state. We are still the apes who need to be pet. In the modern world, we are often touch-starved. We live in a society of personal bubbles and sanitized distances. We have outsourced the grooming to professionals, masseurs, hairdressers, manicurists. We pay strangers to mimic the touch of the kin. And perhaps this is why we feel a vague background anxiety, a sense of disconnection. Our brains are waiting for the endorphin release of the daily grooming that never comes. We are walking around with our emotional lice unpicked. But back in the deep time of our story, the circle is unbroken. The sun is now a deep orange, sitting heavy on the horizon. The grooming has done its work. The tribe is knit together, a single organism made of many bodies, bound by the invisible threads of oxytocin and the very visible contact of skin on skin. The silence of the afternoon, once heavy with heat, is now vibrant with connection. A baby coos, a sound of pure contentment. A woman hums a low three-note melody as she braids a piece of grass, her fingers still alive with the memory of the grooming. The language of touch has been spoken, and everyone has been heard. As the air cools, the skin, that sensitive, vulnerable boundary, contracts slightly, goosebumps rising as the evening chill sets in. But the warmth of the social bond holds. They stand together, shoulder to shoulder, watching the light die, ready to face the night, not as individuals, but as a tribe. The hands hang by their sides, relaxed, knowing the topography of their kin, knowing that they hold the power to heal, to calm, and to connect. This is the legacy of the afternoon. It is the lesson that survival is not just about the sharpness of the spear, but about the softness of the touch. It is the understanding that in a hard world, the softest things are often the strongest. The grooming circle breaks, but the circle of the tribe remains, carved not in bone, but in the memory of the fingertips. As the great golden wheel of the sun begins its descent towards the western horizon, the fierce, blinding heat of the afternoon begins to relent. The world, which had been flattened by the noon glare into a two-dimensional shimmer of heat and light, now regains its depth. Shadows, long and violet, begin to stretch out from the base of the acacia trees and the rocky outcrops, reaching across the savannah like the fingers of the coming night. The silence of the siesta, that heavy, drowsy pause where biology bows to physics, begins to fracture. But it is not broken by a shout, nor by the chaotic scramble of a hunt. It is broken by a sound that is distinct to our species, a sound that defines the human experience more than any roar or song. Click, and then a pause, a breath, the shifting of weight. Clack. The camp is waking up to the rhythm of stone. We enter now into the era of the first industry, but do not imagine the soot-choked skies of the Victorian age or the deafening clamor of the assembly line. Imagine instead a workshop under the open sky, a cathedral of craft where the roof is the endless blue of the Pleistocene atmosphere, and the floor is the hard-packed earth of the Great Rift Valley, or perhaps the mossy entrance of a limestone cave in the Dordogne. The rhythm of stone is the heartbeat of the Paleolithic afternoon. It is a percussive music that has played for 3 million years, the soundtrack to our ascent from the animal kingdom to the realm of the makers. Focus your mind's eye on the source of this sound. There, sitting cross-legged on a mat of woven grass, or perhaps directly on the cooling dirt, sits the toolmaker. Let us observe him, or her, for the archaeological record whispers that these hands belong to women as often as men, with the reverence due a master artist. The toolmaker holds a nodule of flint in their left hand. It is a heavy, irregular lump of stone, a nodule birthed from the sedimentary chalk beds of an ancient ocean. To the uninitiated eye, it is just a rock. It is cold, hard, and silent. But to the maker, it is a library of possibility. It is a puzzle waiting to be solved. The maker turns the stone over and over in their hands. This is the reading of the rock. They are feeling its weight, its density. They are looking for the cortex, the rough outer skin, and seeking the platform, the specific angle of geometry where a strike will yield a result. This is not a random act of bashing rocks together. This is a game of three-dimensional chess played with geology. The mind of the maker is projecting into the interior of the stone, visualizing the perfect hand axe or the razor-sharp scraper that lies hiding within the matrix, waiting to be liberated. In the right hand, the maker holds the hammerstone. It is a rounded river cobble, perhaps quartzite or granite, chosen for its density and its fit in the palm. It is the brush, the chisel, the bow. The maker takes a breath, steadying the core muscles, grounding themselves against the earth. The arm rises. The elbow acts as the fulcrum. And then, with a motion that is both fluid and violent, the hammerstone descends. The strike is a miracle of physics. It must be precise to the millimeter. If the angle is too shallow, the hammerstone will skid, crushing the edge. If the angle is too steep, the flint will shatter into useless dust. But the master knows the angle. It is a knowledge not written in books, but encoded in the muscle memory of the arm and the wrist. The hammerstone connects. Crack. The sound is sharp, high-pitched, almost glassy. A flake of flint detaches from the core. It flies off, spinning in the air, catching the amber light of the setting sun before tinkling to the ground. This is conchoidal fracture, the shell-like curve that defines how silica-rich stones break. The flake is razor-sharp, sharper than any surgical steel we can manufacture today. Its edges taper down to a single molecule in thickness. It is a cutting instrument of terrifying perfection, born from a collision of stones. The maker pauses. They inspect the core. They run a calloused thumb over the scar left by the flake, feeling the bulb of percussion, the ripple in the stone where the shock wave traveled through the solid mass. They rotate the stone 5 degrees. They prepare for the next strike. This is the rhythm. Strike, inspect, rotate, plan, strike. It is a slow, meditative loop, a trance-like state where the maker ceases to be a separate entity and becomes a conduit for the physics of fracture. Let us consider the hands that perform this magic. In the biography of the body, the hand of the stone napper is a central character. Look at the anatomy. The thumb is long, powerful, capable of sweeping across the palm to touch the little finger, the opposition that allows for the precision grip. The muscles of the thenar eminence, the fleshy pad at the base of the thumb, are thick and developed. These are the muscles that allow us to hold the core steady against the shock of the strike. But there is a cost to this adaptation. The hand is a landscape of trauma. The left hand, the one holding the core, is often scarred. Tiny, crescent-shaped white lines mark the places where a miscalculated strike sent a razor flake slicing into the flesh. The knuckles are swollen, the skin leathery and stained with the dust of the stone. These hands ache in the damp mornings. They carry the memory of 1,000 shocks. Yet, they are the most sophisticated tools on the planet. They are the instruments that built the world. As we pull back from the intimacy of the single maker, we see that they are not alone. The rhythm of stone is a communal sound. Around the camp, others are engaged in the industry of the afternoon. The click-clack of the napper is the metronome, but there are other instruments in this orchestra. To the left, near the dying embers of the hearth, a group is working on hides. This is a task of immense physical labor and patience. A fresh hide is heavy, wet, and prone to rot. To turn it into the soft, durable leather that will serve as a tunic, a shelter, or a baby sling, it must be cured. A woman kneels over a staked-out antelope skin. In her hand, she holds a scraper, a stone tool made perhaps by the very napper sitting nearby. It has a convex edge, retouched to be steep and strong. She leans forward, driving the scraper across the surface of the hide. Scritch, scritch, scritch. The sound is dry and rhythmic. She is removing the subcutaneous fat and the membrane, cleaning the skin down to the dermis. It is repetitive work, a motion that burns in the shoulders and the lower back. But like the napper, she has entered a flow state. Her body rocks back and forth, a pendulum of production. The sensory details of this corner of the camp are pungent. The smell of the raw hide mixes with the metallic scent of the blood and the earthy smell of the tanning agent, often a mixture of animal brains and water, rubbed into the skin to emulsify the oils and soften the fibers. Every animal has enough brains to tan its own hide, the ancient saying goes. It is a visceral, messy, organic chemistry. Yet out of this gore comes the technology of clothing. Out of this repetitive scraping comes the barrier against the Ice Age wind. Further away, in the shade of a rock overhang, another rhythm plays out. This is the silent revolution, the technology that rarely survives in the fossil record because it is made of organic matter, fiber. A group, perhaps younger members of the tribe or elders with eyes too dim for fine stonework, are twisting cordage. They have gathered the long, fibrous stems of nettles, or the inner bark of the lime tree, or the sinews from a deer's leg. Watch their hands. They roll the fibers down their thigh, a brisk, rolling motion that twists the strands tight. Then, with a deft flick, they ply them together, allowing the torque to lock the strands into a rope. Zip, roll, zip, roll. It is a whisper of sound compared to the percussion of the stone, but it is no less vital. This string will become the bowstring that drives the arrow. It will become the net that catches the fish. It will become the snare that catches the hare. It will become the carrier bag that allows us to gather more than our hands can hold. This communal workshop is the original schoolroom. There are no blackboards, no lectures, no exams. There is only observation. A child, perhaps 6 summers old, sits near the master napper. He watches with wide, unblinking eyes. He holds a small, useless piece of limestone in his hand, mimicking the motions of the elder. He strikes it with a pebble. Nothing happens. He frowns. He watches again. This is the activation of the mirror neurons in the brain. We are hardwired to learn by copying. The child sees the angle of the elder's wrist, and his own brain fires the same neurons, simulating the action without moving a muscle. He is downloading the software of survival. Occasionally, the master might pause, reach out, and adjust the child's grip. A grunt, a nod, a gentle tap on the correct spot of the stone. This transmission of knowledge, from the old hand to the young hand, is the golden thread that connects the generations. If this chain breaks, if the knowledge is not passed down, the tribe will slide back into the darkness. The survival of the species depends on this afternoon lesson. The atmosphere of the camp during this time is one of companionable industry. The intense focus of the work does not preclude connection. It enhances it. Because the hands are busy with tasks that are rhythmic and familiar, the mind is free to wander, and the mouth is free to speak. This is the time of gossip, of storytelling, of politics. The low murmur of voices weaves through the sounds of the work. They speak of the herd movements observed that morning. The bison are moving to the river, a scraper might say, the rhythm of her work never breaking. They speak of the strange tracks found in the mud. They speak of the interpersonal dramas of the tribe, who is mating with whom, who is hoarding food, who is sick. This combination of language and tool-making is not a coincidence. Neuroscientists have discovered that the area of the brain responsible for complex hand movements, the precise sequencing required to nap a flint hand axe, overlaps significantly with Broca's area, the region responsible for language. As we learn to shape the stone with syntax and grammar, strike here, then turn, then strike there, we learn to shape our breath into words. The tool and the sentence grew up together. The rhythm of stone is the rhythm of speech. Let us return to the napper. He has now shaped the core into a biface, a teardrop-shaped tool, symmetrical and pleasing to the eye. This is the famous Aculean hand axe. It is the Swiss Army knife of the Paleolithic, a multi-purpose tool used for butchering, digging, and cutting wood. But look at it closely. It is symmetrical. The left side mirrors the right. Why? A functional tool does not need to be beautiful. A sharp flake cuts just as well as a symmetrical one. But the maker has spent extra time, taken extra risks, to make it balanced. This is the birth of aesthetics. This is the first art. The maker is imposing a sense of order onto the chaos of the natural world. They are saying, I can see the shape in my mind, and I can make the world match my mind. This desire for beauty, for symmetry, is a vestige we still carry. We love symmetrical faces, symmetrical buildings, symmetrical gardens. It started here, in the dust, with a rock. The floor of the workshop is becoming a dangerous landscape. It is littered with debitage, the waste flakes of the process. These are razor sharp. To walk here with bare feet is to risk injury, and so the workspace is respected. It is a designated zone. This implies a structure to the camp, a zoning of domestic space. Here is where we sleep. Here is where we eat. Here is where we bleed stone. As the napper works, they enter a state of flow. The psychologists of the modern world describe flow as a state of complete immersion, where self-consciousness falls away and time distorts. The napper is not thinking about his hunger. He is not thinking about the leopard. He is only the stone. The feedback loop is immediate. Strike, result, adjust. This deep focus is a neurological balm. It quiets the monkey mind, the anxious chatter of the brain. In a world of high stress, this repetitive craft is a form of therapy. It is the same feeling we get today when we knit or whittle or garden. We are tapping into the ancient, soothing rhythm of the hands. But the stone has a voice, and sometimes it is a voice of failure. Not every nodule cooperates. Sometimes, deep within the crystal lattice of the flint, there is a hidden flaw, a fossil, a pocket of chalk, a hairline fracture. The napper strikes with perfect technique, but the stone snaps in half. The tool is ruined. Watch the reaction. The napper sighs. A sound of frustration, universal across the eons. He drops the broken pieces. He does not rage. He does not throw the hammerstone. He simply reaches for another nodule. This is the lesson of resilience. The stone teaches patience. It teaches that failure is part of the process. You cannot force the stone, you can only persuade it. This stoicism, this acceptance of the material's will, is a defining trait of the Stone Age mind. As the sun dips lower, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and burnt orange, the industry begins to wind down. The light is becoming too dim for the precision work of napping. To strike in the dark is to risk blinding oneself with a flying shard. The great blue sky workshop is closing for the day. The napper wraps his hammerstone in a piece of soft leather and tucks it into his waist pouch. He gathers the finished tools, the hand axes, the scrapers, the arrowheads. He runs his thumb along the edge of a new blade, feeling the bite of it. It is a sensation of power. With this edge, he is no longer a naked ape with soft fingernails. He has borrowed the tooth of the lion. He has borrowed the claw of the eagle. He is armed. The women scraping the hide stand up, stretching their stiff backs, wiping their hands on the grass. The cordage makers coil their new ropes. The sound of the camp changes again. The click-clack fades. The scritch-scritch stops. The rhythm of stone gives way to the rhythm of fire. But the evidence of the afternoon remains. Look at the ground. It is carpeted in thousands of tiny chips of stone. These piles of debitage will remain there for millennia. Long after the flesh of the tribe has turned to dust, long after the wooden handles of the spears have rotted away, long after the language they spoke has been forgotten, these stones will remain. Future archaeologists, digging in the sediment of this cave floor 50,000 years from now, will find these flakes. They will pick them up and fit them back together like a jigsaw puzzle, reconstructing the ghost of the nodule. They will see the moment of the mistake. They will see the moment of the perfect strike. They will feel the presence of the maker. This rhythm of stone is our most enduring legacy. We are the people of the stone. We evolved with a rock in our hand. Our brains expanded to manage the complexity of the task. Our hands changed shape to hold the core. We are not just users of tools. We are the product of our tools. The stone shaped us as much as we shaped the stone. As the twilight settles over the camp and the first stars begin to prick the veil of the atmosphere, the tribe gathers their new creations. These are not just objects. They are solidified energy. They are the frozen moments of the afternoon's focus. A spear point represents an hour of careful chipping. A soft leather tunic represents days of scraping. They are wealth. The silence returns. But it is a different silence now. It is the satisfied silence of a day well used. The tribe is prepared. They have the edges they need to cut the meat of tomorrow's hunt. They have the warmth they need to survive the night's cold. They have spun the threads that bind them to the world. And somewhere in the dark, a child holds a rough, clumsy flake of stone he made himself. He runs his small thumb over the edge, feeling the sharpness. He smiles. He has entered the rhythm. He has joined the lineage of the makers. The heartbeat of the stone continues, echoing down the long, dark corridor of time, all the way to us. The great star, the architect of the day and the tyrant of the noon, begins its final descent. The harsh, bleaching white light that has hammered the savannah for 12 hours softens, dissolving into a heavy liquid amber. This is the golden hour, a time of day that photographers cherish now, but which, for our ancestors, marked a profound cosmological and biological shift. The world is changing its state. The heat, which had distorted the air into shimmering mirages, lifts from the ground, replaced by the first cool breath of the coming evening. The shadows, which had hidden beneath the trees at midday, now detach themselves and stretch out across the grass, long violet fingers reaching toward the east, as if the night is already grasping for the territory of the day. In the camp, that fragile circle of safety scratched out of the wilderness, the atmosphere undergoes a subtle, electric change. For the last few hours, during the industry of the afternoon, the focus has been internal, the scraping of hides, the knapping of stone, the quiet murmurs of the elders. But now, as the light turns gold, the eyes of the tribe turn outward. They turn toward the horizon. The great waiting begins. This is the daily drama of the Paleolithic. We are a species defined by central place foraging. Unlike the chimpanzee who eats the fruit where he finds it, wandering from tree to tree in a solitary circuit of consumption, the human gathers food to bring it back. We separate to harvest, but we return to share. This behavior, this seemingly simple economic shift, rewrote the emotional landscape of our species. It created the concept of home base, and with it, the concept of separation anxiety. For the mothers holding children, for the elders tending the fire, for the injured nursing their wounds, the horizon is a place of question marks. The foraging parties and the hunters have been gone since the blue hour of the morning. They walked out into a world of lions, of hyenas, of snakes, of sudden falls and broken bones. There is no signal, no way to know their fate. The silence of the distance is absolute. And so, the camp waits. The anxiety is a low-frequency hum in the blood, a spike in cortisol that keeps the sentinels scanning the edge of the world. And then, a shape breaks the line of the earth. It is a small, dark smudge against the burning orange of the western sky. Then another, then a cluster. To the modern eye, they would be indistinguishable from the trunks of distant trees or the movement of ostriches. But the Paleolithic eye is a precision instrument, honed by millions of years of evolution to recognize one specific pattern above all others: the gait of kin. Biomechanists call it biological motion perception. We can identify a human walker from a single point of light moving in the dark. We can identify the gender, the age, and the emotional state of a person just by the rhythm of their stride. The watchers in the camp know from a mile away who is returning. They recognize the loping stride of the tall hunter. They recognize the shuffling, heavy-laden walk of the gatherers. A ripple of relief moves through the camp, a collective exhale that seems to lower the air pressure of the entire valley. They are coming back. As the silhouettes grow larger, resolving into three-dimensional figures painted in the copper light of the setting sun, we witness the return of the hunters. But do not picture the triumphant, clean-jawed heroes of Victorian paintings. Picture the reality of the body. These figures are exhausted. They are written over by the day. Their skin is coated in a paste of sweat and dust, a second skin that tells the story of the miles traveled. Their hair is matted. Their legs, the engines of their survival, are heavy with lactic acid, moving now with a mechanical determination. They approach the perimeter of the camp, and we can see the burden. This is a defining feature of our anatomy. We are the beasts of burden. We are the only animals that voluntarily carry heavy weights over long distances. Look at the hunters. Perhaps they were successful. If so, they carry the carcass of an impala or the haunch of a kudu. The weight is immense. It presses down on the cervical spine, compressing the intervertebral discs that have acted as shock absorbers all day. The muscles of the trapezius and the shoulders are rock hard, locked in a tetanic contraction to stabilize the load. The veins in their necks stand out like ropes. But consider also the gatherers, usually the women, whose return is often less heralded but equally heroic. They carry the invisible calories, the baskets woven from reeds or the slings made of hide, heavy with tubers, nuts, berries, and ostrich eggs. A basket of wild yams can weigh 50 pounds. They have carried this weight for 5 miles, balancing it on their heads or slinging it across their backs, while also carrying a nursing infant. Their return is the return of certainty. The hunt is a gamble. The gathering is an investment. They are the backbone of the tribe's energy budget. And then there are those who return with nothing, the empty-handed. In the unforgiving ledger of the wild, not every day is a victory. The hunter who missed the throw, the forager who found the grove barren, they walk with a different posture. The shoulders are slumped not from weight, but from shame. In a world where food is love, to return with nothing is to feel a profound vulnerability. Yet, they return. This is the crucial covenant of the tribe. You return even when you fail, because your value is not just in your calories, but in your presence, your defense, your genetic future. As the group crosses the invisible threshold of the camp, that psychological line where the wild ends and the home begins, the energy shifts from anxiety to celebration. This is the reunion. The separation of the day is over. The reaction of the camp is visceral. Children run. This is a universal constant. The sight of the returning parent triggers a dopamine explosion in the brain of the child. They sprint across the dirt, disregarding the thorns, driven by the pure, unadulterated need for reconnection. The hunter, exhausted as he is, braces himself. He drops the spear, but he catches the child. This moment of contact is the chemical handshake of the family unit. The smell of the father, sweat, iron blood, crushed sage, the ozone smell of the open plains, is imprinted on the child's olfactory bulb. The texture of the mother's skin, dusty, warm, damp, is the texture of safety. As they embrace, oxytocin floods their systems. It is the anti-stress hormone. It scrubs the cortisol from the blood. It tells the amygdala, the fear center of the brain, to stand down. I am here. You are safe. The pack is whole. The arrival triggers a cascade of physiological changes in the returning walkers. For 12 hours, their sympathetic nervous system, the fight-or-flight system, has been keyed up. They have been hyper-vigilant, scanning for predators, listening for snakes, their hearts beating at an elevated rhythm to fuel the muscles. They have been running on adrenaline. But as they step into the circle of the hearth, as they smell the wood smoke and see the faces of their kin, the parasympathetic nervous system takes over. This is the rest and digest signal. Watch the physical release. The hunters drop their burdens. The carcass hits the earth with a heavy, wet thud. The baskets of tubers are set down with a groan of wood and fiber. The effect on the body is instantaneous. The spine, compressed for hours, elongates. The shoulders drop 2 inches. The chest opens. You can hear the breath changing, from the shallow, rhythmic panting of the trek to the deep, shuddering sighs of relief. It is the decompression of the soul. The weight of the world has been put down. But the relief is not just physical, it is cognitive. During the day, the brain of the hunter is a radar system, processing millions of data points: wind direction, track depth, bird calls, shadow movement. It is a high-load state of intense focus. Upon return, the radar can be switched off. The gaze softens. They no longer need to look at the horizon. They can look at the fire. They can look at the faces of their friends. The low-level focus of the walk is replaced by the social focus of the evening. The camp, which was quiet during the heat of the day, now buzzes with the low-frequency hum of reintegration. This is the debriefing. Even before the food is cooked, the information is shared. This exchange of data is as vital as the exchange of meat. "The water hole to the north is dry," a hunter might gesture, miming the cracked earth. "This saves the tribe a wasted journey tomorrow." "The herd has moved to the valley of the red rocks," another might indicate, drawing a map in the dust with a toe. "There is a leopard in the high grass near the river," a gatherer might warn, her eyes wide, mimicking the stealthy creep of the cat. This gossip, this sharing of the day's news, is the internet of the Stone Age. It is how the collective brain of the tribe is updated. The individual experiences of the day are uploaded to the group consciousness. The danger seen by one becomes the caution of all. The discovery made by one becomes the wealth of all. We must also acknowledge the sensory collision of this moment. The hunters bring the wild into the camp. They carry the smell of the slaughter, the metallic copper scent of fresh blood, which excites the dogs, if this is a later era where wolves have joined the fire, and triggers the hunger of the tribe. They bring the cold of the coming night on their skin. They bring trophies, a feather found on the ground, a strange stone, a skull, and the camp offers something in return to the hunters: warmth. The fire has been built up in anticipation. The radiant heat hits the cooling skin of the walkers, relaxing the muscles that have begun to stiffen. The smell of the camp is the smell of humanity: cured hides, roasting roots, old ash. It is the olfactory signal of the sanctuary. There is a specific ritual of checking that often occurs. The elders, or the mates who stayed behind, might inspect the returning bodies. A hand runs over a new scratch on a forearm. "What happened here?" the touch asks. "Thornbush," the shrug replies. Or perhaps it is a more serious wound, a gash from a boar's tusk, a twisted ankle. The return is the time for triage. The medicinal plants gathered earlier by the grandmothers are brought out. The wound is cleaned. The care is administered. This tenderness is the counterweight to the violence of the day. Let us pause to consider the empty-handed return again, for it reveals the true strength of the human strategy. In the animal kingdom, a solitary leopard who fails to kill starves. If she fails for a week, she dies. But the human hunter who fails does not starve. He returns to the basket of tubers gathered by the women. He returns to the share of meat from another hunter who got lucky. This is cooperative breeding and food sharing. It is the insurance policy that allowed us to conquer the world. The risk is spread. The return of the hunters is not just a delivery of food. It is a validation of the social contract. Today I eat from your spear. Tomorrow you eat from mine. As the twilight deepens, turning the sky from amber to a deep, bruised purple, the golden hour fades into the blue hour of the evening. The silhouettes lose their definition. The faces become illuminated only by the flickering light of the flames. The tribe is now a single organism once more. The scattered limbs of the day, the scouts, the gatherers, the trackers, have reassembled into the body of the group. The energy of the camp is high, charged with the dopamine of survival. They have cheated death for another rotation of the earth. They have stolen energy from the sun, stored in the plants, and from the grass, stored in the meat, to fuel their own fires. There is laughter, a release of nervous tension. There is the beginning of the rhythmic chanting that often accompanies the transition to night. But beneath the celebration, there is a profound exhaustion. The return is the end of the expenditure. The biological batteries are drained. The walkers sit heavily, their legs sprawled out towards the fire, feet throbbing. These feet, calloused and cracked, have read the braille of the landscape for 10 miles today. They deserve their rest. In the shadows, the predators are waking up. The lions are stretching. The hyenas are beginning their whooping calls. The world outside the circle of light is becoming hostile again. But the hunters are back. The perimeter is manned. The spears are stacked by the fire. The return is complete. The golden hour has done its work. It has guided the wanderers home. And as the first stars begin to prick the canopy of the night, looking down on this tiny cluster of sparks in the vast emptiness of the prehistoric world, we see the tribe not as conquerors, but as survivors. They are huddled together, sharing the warmth, sharing the food, and most importantly, sharing the profound relief of simply being together in the dark. This rhythm, the departure at dawn and the return at dusk, is stamped into our genes. It is why, even today, we feel a pull toward home as the sun sets. It is why the commute home feels different than the commute out. It is why we ask our partners, "How was your day?" when they walk through the door. We are reenacting the return. We are checking the horizon. We are waiting for the silhouettes to emerge from the shadows, proving that we are not alone in the wilderness. The nervous system settles. The heartbeat slows to match the rhythm of the fire. The day is done. The night belongs to the tribe. In the tropics, the sun does not linger. There is no long, melancholic twilight of the northern latitudes, no protracted blue hour where the day gently acquiesces to the night. Here, in the cradle of our species, the equator demands a swift execution of the light. The great golden disk plunges below the horizon with the weight of a stone dropped into a deep pool, and the curtain is drawn. It is a sudden dramatic extinction of the visual world. One moment the savannah is a sea of gold and green, stretching to infinity. The next, it is a wall of obsidian, vast and impenetrable. As the light vanishes, the sensory landscape of the Rift Valley undergoes a violent inversion. The eyes, the primary tools of the human animal during the day, are rendered suddenly useless. We are visually effectively blind in the true dark, lacking the tapetum lucidum, the reflective layer behind the retina that gives the leopard its night vision. In this terrifying blindness, the ears prick up. The hearing becomes acute, tuning into the sudden eruption of the nocturnal chorus, the sawing of crickets, the whoop of the hyena, the distant bone-rattling roar of the lion. The air cools rapidly, the heat of the day radiating back out into the cosmos, leaving a chill that seeks out the skin. It is in this moment of vulnerability, when the ancient fear of the dark begins to claw at the edges of the mind, that the tribe turns to its greatest weapon, its oldest friend, and its most sacred technology, the fire. The resurrection of the ember has already occurred at dawn, but now the fire must change its character. It must grow. A figure, perhaps the firekeeper, steps forward into the circle of stones. They feed the glowing coals with intention. They do not use the precious, slow-burning hardwoods yet. They use the kindling, the dry branches of acacia and sage. The fire breathes. It accepts the offering. It climbs, transforming from a bed of passive red eyes into a roaring vertical beacon of orange and yellow. This is the altar of the flame. It is the center of the universe. In the vast, indifferent darkness of the Pleistocene night, this circle of light is the only order that exists. It creates a physical boundary, a sphere of influence. Inside the ring of light, there is humanity, safety, and law. Outside the ring, where the shadows dance and weave, lies chaos, monsters, and death. The fire is the lighthouse that calls the scattered souls of the tribe to the center. And now, the true work of the evening begins. The fire is not merely for warmth, nor solely for protection. It is the engine of our evolution. It is the external stomach. Consider the smell that begins to rise with the smoke. It is a scent that arrests the attention of every primate in the vicinity, but only the human moves toward it. It is the smell of roasting meat. A haunch of antelope, or perhaps the ribs of a gazelle, are placed over the flames. Tubers, dug from the hard earth during the Great Walking, are buried in the hot ash. The chemistry occurring here is a silent miracle. It is the Maillard reaction, a complex bonding of amino acids and reducing sugars that creates the distinct, savory flavor of browned food. But it is doing something far more profound than creating flavor. The heat is denaturing the proteins. It is gelatinizing the starches. It is breaking down the tough, fibrous, cellular walls of the roots that our flat, grinding teeth could never chew raw. This act of cooking is the silent error that rewrote our destiny. Look at the jaw of a modern human, or even our ancestor Homo erectus. It is small, recessed, almost delicate compared to the jutting, powerful muzzle of a chimpanzee or a gorilla. We do not have the massive temporalis muscles that anchor to a crest on top of the skull. We do not have the crushing power to chew raw fibers for 6 hours a day. We traded that power for something else. By surrendering the work of digestion to the fire, we liberated our bodies. The fire does the chewing for us. It pre-digests the food, unlocking a density of calories that raw food can never yield. This flood of easy energy allowed our guts to shrink. The expensive tissue of the digestive tract was reduced, and the energy savings were redirected to the only organ that demanded more: the brain. We are the cooking apes. We are the creatures who learned to eat fire, and in doing so, we grew a mind capable of understanding the stars. As the aroma of the cooking food drifts through the camp, wafting on the currents of the cool night air, it triggers a primal, aching hunger. This is not the casual appetite of the modern snacker. This is the profound, hollow hunger of a body that has walked 10 miles, carried heavy burdens, and survived the heat. The mouth waters, a reflex to prepare the enzymes for the coming feast. The stomach rumbles, a visceral drumbeat joining the sounds of the night. But they do not eat yet. And this is where the human separates from the beast. In a pack of wolves, the kill is a chaotic frenzy. The alpha eats first, the others fight for scraps. It is a hierarchy of violence. But around the altar of the flame, a different law prevails. The food is removed from the fire, the steaming meat, the charred tubers cracked open to reveal the soft white interior. It is hot to the touch, requiring the juggler's dance of fingers to hold. The distribution begins. It follows unwritten laws of equity and hierarchy, encoded in the traditions of the tribe for thousands of generations. The hunter who made the kill does not hoard it. In fact, in many hunter-gatherer societies, the successful hunter is often the last to eat, or speaks of the meat with humility, insulting his own kill to prevent arrogance. It is a small, scrawny thing, he might say, even as he presents a fat beast. The meat is sliced with a sharp flake of flint, the rhythm of stone returning for a brief encore in the firelight. The portions are handed out. The elders, the keepers of memory, are fed. The children, the vessels of the future, are fed. The pregnant women, the sick, the injured. The food moves through the circle like a sacrament. This sharing is the physical manifestation of the social contract. It says, We survive together. Your hunger is my hunger. To sit in that circle and receive a portion of meat that you did not hunt is the ultimate definition of tribal belonging. It is the breaking of bread, or bone, long before the invention of wheat. It is the binding of the soul through the sharing of calories. And then, they eat. The silence of the consumption is heavy and focused. The only sounds are the tearing of meat, the cracking of marrow bones against stones, the sighs of satisfaction. The firelight dances on their faces, illuminating the mechanics of the feast. Watch the teeth, the incisors slicing, the molars grinding. These are the tools of an omnivore, a generalist who can eat the world. Watch the eyes. In the firelight, the pupils are dilated. They are not looking at the horizon anymore. They are looking at the food, and then, slowly, at each other. As the bellies fill, the chemistry of the group changes again. The glucose hits the bloodstream. The parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest mode, takes full command. The tension of the day, the vigilance, the adrenaline, finally dissolves completely. The body softens. The heavy eyelids droop for a moment, then flutter open again. The immediate crisis of survival is over. They have won the day. And now, the theater begins. The silence gives way to sound. It starts perhaps with a belch, a sign of appreciation, then a murmur, then a laugh. The fire, roaring and crackling, creates a flickering stroboscopic light that animates the faces of the tribe. This is the chiaroscuro of the Paleolithic. The shadows are deep and mobile. The highlights are warm and shifting. In this light, a face can transform. A grimace becomes a smile. A furrowed brow becomes a mask of wisdom. This is the original stage. The darkness beyond the circle acts as the wings of the theater, the void from which stories emerge. An elder wipes the grease from his chin and leans forward. The tribe falls silent, turning their faces toward him like sunflowers turning to the sun. He begins to speak. Language, complex and narrative, likely evolved here by the fire. In the daylight, communication is utilitarian. Snake. Water. Run. But in the safety of the firelight, communication becomes art. The elder recounts the day's hunt. He does not just report it, he performs it. He stands up, his shadow cast long and huge against the rock wall of the overhang or the trunks of the trees. He becomes the lion. He hunches his shoulders, curls his fingers into claws. He mimics the low, guttural growl of the predator. The children stare, eyes wide, shivering with a safe fear. They are learning. They are downloading the data of survival through the medium of the story. They learn how the lion moves, how the buffalo turns, without ever having to face the danger in the flesh. This is the birth of education. It is the birth of myth. The storyteller points to the sparks flying up into the dark sky and calls them the spirits of the ancestors. He explains why the moon changes its face. He explains why the hyena laughs. He weaves the chaos of the natural world into a tapestry of meaning. The altar of the flame is where the human imagination was forged. Staring into the fire induces a trance-like state. The flickering light stimulates the alpha waves in the brain, the bridge between the conscious and the subconscious. In this hypnagogic state, the mind wanders. It makes connections that the harsh light of day obscures. It is here that the concept of the future is planned. Tomorrow, we will go to the river. Next moon, the herds will return. The firelight creates a focal point, drawing every gaze into its center. It is a centripetal force. In a world that is constantly trying to scatter them, predators scattering the herd, scarcity scattering the foragers, the fire pulls them back together. It creates a joint attention state where everyone is looking at the same thing, feeling the same emotion at the same time. This synchronization of the mind is the glue of culture. Imagine the sounds of this night, the crackle of the wood, the release of energy stored from the sun years ago. the rhythmic chanting that might begin as the night deepens, the clapping of hands, the drumming on a hollow log, the voice of the tribe rising up against the immense silence of the Pleistocene wilderness. It is a defiant sound. It says, "We are here, we are awake, we are together." The fire also serves a crucial physiological function during these hours. It extends the day. Most animals are governed by the rhythm of the sun. When it sets, they sleep. But by capturing light, humans expanded their effective day. We gained 4 or 5 hours of social time that no other animal has. These are the hours of bonding. This is when the grandmother holds the infant and hums a melody. This is when the young lovers exchange glances across the flames. This is when the alliances are forged that will hold firm when the spears are thrown tomorrow. As the night wears on, the fire begins to die down. The roaring beacon settles into a bed of glowing, breathing coals, the resurrection, waiting for the next morning. The storytelling fades. The laughter softens into whispers. The tribe begins to settle for sleep, moving into the huddle described in the earlier chapters. But even as they sleep, the altar remains. It is the sentinel that does not blink. The smell of the smoke has permeated their hair, their skin, their furs. It is the perfume of home. The warmth of the embers radiates out, fighting back the chill of the ice age or the desert night. In this brief window, before the dreams take them, the universe has contracted. The terrifying vastness of the cosmos, the cold stars, the stalking predators, they are all forgotten. The world consists only of this circle of warmth. It consists only of the full belly, the taste of the roasted meat still lingering on the tongue. It consists of the faces of kin, glowing soft and red in the dying light. This is the sanctuary we still seek. When we light a candle at dinner, when we gather around a fireplace at Christmas, when we stare into a campfire on a beach, we are answering the call of the altar. We are trying to recreate that moment of perfect safety, that moment when the technology of fire and the biology of the body met to create the soul of the human experience. The altar of the flame is not just a place of cooking, it is the place where we became us. It is the forge of the human spirit. And as the last ember glows in the deep dark, it holds the promise. The sun will rise. But until it does, the fire will keep the watch. The great, communal voice of the fire has fallen to a whisper. The leaping tongues of yellow and orange, which only an hour ago illuminated the faces of the storytellers and the grease-stained chins of the feasters, have retreated into the earth. What remains is the respiration of the ember. A pulsing, deep red glow that mimics the slow, rhythmic breathing of a dying beast. The smoke, no longer a thick white pillar of industry, has thinned to a ghostly ribbon of blue, drifting vertically into the canopy of the acacia or the stone roof of the cave, carrying with it the scent of charred juniper and the memories of the day. As the light withdraws, the world undergoes a terrifying contraction. During the golden hour, the horizon was infinite, a promise of endless territory. Now the universe has shrunk to a circle of perhaps 10 feet in diameter. Beyond this fragile sphere of influence, the visual world ceases to exist. It is replaced by a void so absolute, so heavy, and so impenetrable that the modern mind, bathed in the perpetual twilight of street lamps and screens, can scarcely comprehend it. This is the true dark. It is not merely the absence of photons, it is a physical weight, a primordial ocean that presses against the skin, demanding that the human animal recognize its own insignificance. We are, by our very biological architecture, creatures of the sun. Our evolution is a story written in the light. Millions of years ago, our primate ancestors traded the nocturnal life of the prosimians for the diurnal life of the fruit-gatherer. In doing so, we made a genetic bargain that defined our destiny. We refined our color vision, developing the trichromatic sight that allows us to spot a red berry against a green leaf or the flush of blood in a lover's cheek. But the cost of this vibrant daylight mastery was the loss of the night. Consider the human eye as it stares into this abyss. It is a camera designed for the high-contrast studio of the day. We lack the tapetum lucidum, that miraculous crystalline layer of cells behind the retina that acts as a mirror, reflecting light back through the eyes of the cat, the wolf, and the owl. If you shine a torch into the dark, the eyes of the predator glow back with a spectral green or gold fire. They are seeing twice. They are harvesting every stray photon of starlight. But the human eye absorbs the dark and gives nothing back. In the absence of the moon, we are effectively blind. We are sensory invalids, stumbling in a world that has suddenly become the property of others. And this darkness was alive. To understand the psychology of our ancestors, and indeed the anxiety that still twitches in your own chest when the lights go out, we must populate this darkness with its rightful owners. The night of the Pleistocene was not empty. It was a crowded theater of teeth. The fossil record whispers the names of the monsters that owned the shadows. Meganterion, the dirk-toothed cat; Pachyrhikuta, the giant short-faced hyena, capable of cracking the femur of a hippopotamus; and perhaps most terrifying of all, Deinophilis, the terrible cat, a predator whose anatomy suggests a specialization in hunting primates. Imagine the Deinophilis. It was a creature of stealth, heavy-bodied and powerful, built not for the sprint, but for the ambush. It did not roar like a lion to announce its presence. It moved with the silence of smoke. Its padded paws absorbed the sound of dry leaves. Its coat was a camouflage of shadows. It could lie in the tall grass just beyond the periphery of the camp, 5 meters away, and remain completely invisible to the human eye. It was a ghost until the moment it struck. This reality, the reality of being hunted, is the ink in which the history of the human nervous system is written. The fear of the dark is not a childish phobia to be outgrown. It is not a malfunction of the imagination. It is a piece of ancient, hard-won wisdom carved into the amygdala, that almond-shaped alarm bell deep within the temporal lobes. When a child asks for a nightlight, they are not being irrational. They are listening to the silent voice of the gene. They are responding to a genetic memory that says, the absence of light is the presence of death. To be fearless in the dark during the Stone Age was not bravery, it was a genetic dead end. The fearless walked out to relieve themselves and never returned. The fearful stayed by the fire. We are the descendants of the paranoid. We are the children of those who heard a snap in the twigs and froze, their hearts hammering against their ribs like trapped birds. And so, as the fire dies, the tribe huddles closer. The geography of the camp shifts. During the day, there is space between individuals, the personal distance of industry and movement. But at night, the space collapses. The periphery of the camp becomes a physical boundary line between life and death. To step outside the light, to step beyond the reach of the fire's glow, was to step into the food chain. It was to demote oneself from the apex predator to the prey item. This pressure created a unique social geometry, the circle of survival. The tribe arranges itself not in rows, but in a ring or a tight cluster. The most vulnerable, the infants, the pregnant women, the injured, are placed in the center, the keep of the human castle. The able-bodied adults form the outer wall. They sit or lie with their backs to the darkness, a posture of defiance. But who watches the watchers? This brings us to one of the most fascinating theories of anthropological sleep science, the sentinel hypothesis. We often wonder why human sleep is so fragile, why so many of us suffer from insomnia, why we wake at 3 a.m. with a sudden, inexplicable alertness. In the modern world, we treat this as a disorder, a failure of the body to sedate itself. But in the context of the Pleistocene night, this insomnia was a superpower. Genetic studies and observations of modern hunter-gatherer tribes, like the Hadza of Tanzania, reveal a beautiful asymmetry in our sleep patterns. Humans of different ages do not sleep at the same time. The teenagers are night owls, their circadian rhythms shifted late. The elders are larks, waking before the dawn. And within the prime adults, there is a variation in sleep depth. This means that at any given moment during the 8 hours of darkness, statistically, nearly 40% of the tribe is awake or in a light stage of sleep. We are a species that never fully closes its eyes. We are a biological relay team of vigilance. Picture the sentinel. Perhaps it is an older male, his joints aching from the humidity, or a young mother whose nursing infant keeps her tethered to consciousness. They sit by the fading embers. The rest of the tribe has dissolved into the soft, rhythmic breathing of sleep, a sound that is itself a comfort, a sign that the group is alive. But the sentinel is alone in the waking world. Their sensory experience is heightened to a painful degree. Without vision, the ears become the primary sentries. The human ear is tuned to the frequency of the human voice, but at night, it retunes itself to the frequency of the anomaly. The sentinel listens to the wind moving through the acacia thorns, a constant shushing white noise. They filter this out, searching for the break in the pattern. Snap. The sound is microscopic, a dry twig breaking under a padded foot 50 yards away. To the sentinel, it sounds like a thunderclap. The head snaps up. The breath is held. The heart rate spikes, pumping cortisol into the blood, sharpening the senses. Is it a gazelle, shifting its weight? Is it the wind knocking a branch loose? Or is it the Pachikrakuta, the bone crusher, testing the perimeter? The sentinel picks up a stone or a spear. They do not run out to investigate. That would be suicide. They wait. They might throw a stone into the darkness, a ranging shot to see if something moves. If the sound continues, they might wake a neighbor with a gentle touch. No words are spoken. A hand on a shoulder is enough. 2 pairs of eyes are better than 1. 2 spears are better than 1. This shared vulnerability created a profound psychological closeness that is difficult to replicate in our safe, walled-off world. In the daylight, the tribe might be riven by petty squabbles, by jealousies over food or mates. But the darkness erased these divisions. The night forced them to trust one another implicitly. Think of the intimacy of sleeping next to someone in this environment. You are entrusting your life to their ears. You are surrendering your consciousness, drifting into the paralysis of REM sleep, solely because you believe that the person next to you and the sentinel by the fire will not let you die. This is the bedrock of human society. It is a contract signed in sleep. I will watch for you, and you will watch for me. The sounds of the night were not just threats. They were also a map. The roar of the lion in the distance was a GPS coordinate, telling the tribe where the danger lay. The call of the nightjar, the scuttling of the beetle. These were the textures of the void. And there were the smells. The cooling air trapped scents near the ground. The sentinel might smell the musk of a herd of buffalo passing in the dark, or the damp, metallic scent of a kill made nearby. The nose, often neglected in our visual hierarchy, became a vital radar dish in the blindness of the night. But the night was not just a time of fear, it was a time of deep time. In the absence of visual distraction, the mind turns inward. The darkness beyond the camp was mirrored by the darkness within. As the sentinels stared into the dying coals, seeing the glowing red eye of the fire, they likely engaged in a form of cognitive time travel. This solitude, this quiet watch, was the incubator of reflection. With no tasks to perform, no tools to make, the human mind was free to wander the corridors of memory. Where did the herds go last year? What did my father mean by that story? What happens to the fire when it goes out? It is possible that philosophy, religion, and complex abstract thought were born not in the busy activity of the day, but in the long, terrified, bored silences of the night watch. The stars overhead, piercing the black canopy with their cold, indifferent light, were the first great mystery. The Milky Way, a river of milk, a path of spirits, stretched across the sky, a ceiling that was both beautiful and crushing in its scale. The sentinel watched the constellations wheel overhead, the slow clockwork of the cosmos marking the passage of the dangerous hours. And what of the sleepers? What happened in the brains of those huddled in the pile? Paleoneurobiology suggests that the dreams of our ancestors were far more intense and far more functional than our own. This is the threat simulation theory of dreaming. The idea is that the dream state is a biological virtual reality simulator. In the safety of sleep, the brain runs scenarios. It practices the flight from the lion. It practices the fight with the rival. It rehearses the trauma of the day to prepare for the reality of tomorrow. So, the silence of the camp was deceptive. Beneath the closed eyelids of the tribe, 1,000 frantic chases were taking place. Muscles twitched as the brain commanded legs to run, but the spinal block of REM sleep kept the bodies still. They were fighting the saber-tooth in the theater of the mind, sharpening their reflexes while their bodies rested. Sometimes the fear broke through. A night terror would grip a child or a warrior. A scream would tear through the silence, a sound more frightening than the roar of a predator because it came from within. The tribe would stir. A mother would hush the child. A hand would reach out to calm the shaking shoulder. The fire would be stoked. The darkness would be pushed back a few inches, and then, slowly, the rhythm of sleep would return. We must also consider the acoustic wall of the night. In the deep forests or the savannah, the acoustics change after dark. Sound travels further in the cooler, denser air. The soundscape of the day, the bird songs, the wind in the grass, is replaced by a different frequency. The silence acts as a canvas for the terrifyingly loud sounds of the nocturnal world. The breaking of a branch sounds like a gunshot. The rustle of dry leaves sounds like footsteps. This auditory amplification contributed to the animistic worldview of early humans. If every sound in the dark sounds deliberate, then the darkness must be full of intent. The wind isn't just air, it's a spirit. The crack of the wood isn't just physics, it's a voice. The night was a conversation with the invisible. There were nights when the moon offered a reprieve. The full moon fever observed in many animals applies to humans too. On nights of the full moon, the true dark was diluted to a milky blue twilight. We could see the horizon. We could see the shapes of the trees. On these nights, the anxiety of the camp likely lowered. The sentinels could relax slightly. There might have been late-night dancing or hunting by moonlight, a rare and dangerous expansion of the human niche. But then came the new moon, the nights of the dead moon. These were the nights of maximum danger. The darkness was absolute. The predators, emboldened by the cloak of invisibility, came closer. These were the nights when the fire was fed most generously, when the huddle was tightest. These were the nights when the tribe held its breath. The periphery of the camp, that boundary line, was also a place of sanitation and taboo. To relieve oneself, one had to leave the circle. This simple biological necessity was a high-stakes mission. You did not go alone. You went with a partner, a spear in hand. You stepped out of the light, hurried into the shadows, and rushed back. The edge of the camp became associated with impurity and danger, a concept that persists in many cultures' folklore about thresholds and gateways to the underworld. The temperature drop during the night was another antagonist. In the Rift Valley, the temperature can swing from blistering heat to near freezing. The huddle was a thermal engine. The bodies on the outside acted as insulation for the bodies on the inside. Throughout the night, there was a slow, unconscious rotation. Those who were cold on the periphery would wake and burrow into the center. Those who were warm in the center would be pushed to the edge. It was a slow-motion convection current of human flesh, ensuring that no one froze, just as the sharing of food ensured no one starved. As the hours dragged on, the glowing red eye of the fire would begin to film over with white ash. The sentinel would have to make a choice. Add the precious wood now or save it for the wolf hour, that coldest, darkest time just before the dawn when the spirit is weakest and the predators are most desperate. This resource management was a game of life and death played with sticks and air. The night was a long wait for the sun. It was a period of heightened awareness even in repose. But it was also the forge of connection. It was in the dark that we learned to be truly human. Consider the evolutionary irony. The very thing that made us vulnerable, our poor night vision, our lack of claws, our hairless skin, forced us to develop the very things that made us conquerors. It forced us to build fires. It forced us to invent weapons. It forced us to develop language to coordinate the watch. And most importantly, it forced us to love each other. Because in the dark, you cannot survive as an individual. You can only survive as a we. The terror of the Dinophilus created the bond of the family. The shadow of the hyena created the trust of the tribe. As the night deepens towards the early morning, the silence becomes heavy. The crickets slow their rhythm as the temperature drops. The predators, having eaten or failed, begin to return to their dens. The sentinel's head nods, fighting the overwhelming gravity of sleep. But they do not give in. They stare at the red eye of the fire. They listen to the breathing of their kin. They look up at the stars, which have shifted their positions in the great dome. They know that the earth is turning. They know that the sun is a faithful God, and that it will return. Until then, they are the guardians of the flame. They are the line drawn in the dirt. They are the watchers in the darkness beyond. And in their silent vigil, they hold the future of the species safe within the circle of the light. The fire has done its work. The storytelling is finished, the voices of the elders trailing off into the soft, rhythmic cadence of the night. The final bones have been cracked for their marrow, the remnants of the feast cast into the shadows for the scavengers that patrol the periphery. Now, the great crushing gravity of the Pleistocene descent takes hold. It is a physical weight, the accumulation of 20,000 steps, the lifting of heavy stones, the tension of the hunt, and the constant thrumming vigilance of the nervous system. The adenosine, that chemical hourglass of the brain, has run its sand. The body, an engine that has burned hot and fierce under the equatorial sun, now demands the cooling waters of oblivion. And so, we arrive at the final act of the prehistoric day, the architecture of sleep. To understand how our ancestors slept, we must first dismantle the modern architecture of the bedroom. Tear down the walls that separate the parents from the children. Remove the door that locks the world away. Dissolve the concept of privacy, for in the deep time of our species, privacy was a synonym for death. Strip away the raised platform of the bed, the memory foam, the synthetic duvet. We are returning to the ground. We are returning to the huddle. The preparation for sleep was a ritual as vital as the sharpening of a spear. It began with the earth itself. In the caves of the Levant, or the rock shelters of the South African coast, we find the fossilized ghosts of the first beds. These were not casual piles of dirt. They were carefully engineered nests. The tribe would gather armfuls of sedge grass, aromatic leaves of the camphor bush, or the soft boughs of spruce. They possessed a botanical wisdom that we have lost. They chose plants containing natural insecticides, chemical compounds that repelled the fleas and mosquitoes that plagued the night. They built their nests layer by layer, creating an insulating barrier between the heat of their bodies and the heat-sinking cold of the stone floor. Imagine the sensory texture of this bed. It smells of crushed herbs, of dust, and of the wood smoke that has settled into the very fibers of the grass. It rustles with every movement, a dry, whispering sound that becomes the acoustic backdrop of the night. It is not soft in the way a cloud is soft. It is firm, contouring to the body, but offering the resistance of the planet. Our ancestors did not suffer from the back pain of the sedentary. Their spines were strong, surrounded by bands of muscle, adapted to find comfort on the hard contours of the terrain. As the fire settles into a glowing red eye, blinking in the draft, the tribe begins to collapse. This is not the orderly retirement of a modern family into separate rooms. It is a slow, fluid merging of biology. They sleep in a huddle. It is a pile of humanity, a tangle of limbs and furs, a jigsaw puzzle of skin and hair. This structure is the most efficient thermodynamic machine ever invented by nature. In the plunging temperatures of the Ice Age tundra or the sudden biting chill of the desert night, a solitary human is a rapidly cooling object. We have no thick pelt. Our surface area is large compared to our volume. We leak heat. But when 10 or 20 or 30 bodies press together, the mathematics change. The surface area is reduced. The heat generated by the metabolism of one warms the back of another. The tribe becomes a single giant organism, a collective furnace that defies the cold. There is a hierarchy to the heap, a geography of warmth. The most vulnerable, the infants, the small children, are placed deep in the center, the kernel of the tribe. Here, the temperature is tropical, stable, and safe. The mothers surround them. The older children and the adults form the outer layers, and on the very edge, the sentinels and the strongest males take the positions most exposed to the draft and the danger. Throughout the night, there is a slow, unconscious convection current. A body chilled on the edge might wake and burrow deeper. A body overheated in the center might roll outward. It is a fluid dynamics of flesh, a sleeping dance that ensures the survival of the whole. But the huddle offered more than just warmth. It offered the only armor available in a world of monsters. The night of the Paleolithic was a terrifyingly active place. The saber-toothed cat, the cave hyena, the giant bear, these were creatures of the dark. A sleeping human is a paralyzed human. During REM sleep, the brainstem sends a signal to the spinal cord to paralyze the major muscles, preventing us from acting out our dreams. For 20 minutes at a time, we are helpless statues. In this state of paralysis, the huddle was the protection. To sleep entangled with your kin was to be wired into a collective alarm system. If a predator approached, the vibration of its steps would be felt by the sleepers on the ground. A sudden intake of breath by a sentinel would ripple through the pile. A tactile signal, a stiffening of a muscle, a sudden jerk, would transmit the warning instantly from body to body. You did not need to wake up to know you were safe. You felt the safety in the heavy, warm weight of the leg draped over yours, in the rhythmic rise and fall of the chest pressed against your back. This collective respiration is a sound that has vanished from our lives. Imagine the acoustic environment of the cave. It is not silent. It is filled with the deep, synchronized breathing of 30 people. It is a rhythmic ocean of sound. The soft snores, the deep exhalations, the small whimpers of dreaming children, the rustle of the grass mats. This was the white noise of our evolution. It signaled that the tribe was present, that the lungs of the group were working. Silence, absolute silence, was terrifying. Silence meant that something was holding its breath, waiting to strike. And so, the modern struggle with insomnia, the anxiety of the quiet bedroom, may be a form of evolutionary homesickness. We lie in our climate-controlled boxes, isolated from the touch and the sound of our clan, and our ancient amygdala scans the silence, wondering where everyone has gone. We are lonely for the huddle. We are starved for the reassurance of the pile. Sleep in this era was likely not one long, unbroken block of 8 hours. The monophasic sleep we strive for today is a modern invention, born of the Industrial Revolution and the artificial light bulb. Our ancestors slept in segments. They were biphasic or polyphasic sleepers. The night was long, 12 hours in the winter, and it was broken by the demands of the environment. The fire did not tend itself. Every few hours, the flames would die down, the cold would creep in, and someone would have to rouse themselves to feed the hearth. This was not a burden, but a rhythm. The sleeper would wake, perhaps shivering slightly, and move to the center of the circle. They would add a branch, watch the sparks fly up into the soot-stained ceiling, and feel the warmth return. In that moment of wakefulness, they would look around at the sleeping forms of their family, a silent roll call of the living. Mothers woke constantly. The human infant is a needy sleeper, requiring frequent feeding and reassurance. The breast-sleeping relationship was continuous. The child, nestled against the mother's skin, would wake, feed, and drift back off without the mother ever fully rousing. The cycles of the mother and child synchronized, their sleep stages aligning in a biological duet. This constant, low-level vigilance was the price of keeping the offspring alive. There was also the phenomenon of the dorveille, or the watch. In the deep middle of the night, between the first sleep and the second sleep, there was often a period of wakefulness that lasted an hour or more. This was not a time of frustration, of tossing and turning and looking at the clock. It was a time of distinct quality. In the quiet of the dorveille, under the protection of the embers, the tribe was awake in a different way. This was a time for quiet intimacy. Lovers would find each other in the dark, their whispers masked by the snores of the group. Elders might murmur stories to the wakeful children. It was a time of reflection, of staring into the dark and processing the day. It was a time when the veil between the physical world and the spiritual world felt thinnest. The hallucinations of fatigue might blend with the shadows, creating the ghosts and spirits that populated their mythology. Then, the second sleep would take them. This sleep was often deeper, richer in dreams, carrying them through the coldest hour of the night, the wolf hour, until the birds began to sing the sun back into the sky. But what of the dreams themselves? What played out on the cinema screen of the Paleolithic mind? We can look to the threat simulation theory of dreaming for a clue. Evolutionary biologists suggest that dreaming is not random. It is a biological virtual reality simulator. It is a training ground. In the safety of the huddle, paralyzed by the chemistry of sleep, the ancestors' brain was running drills. They dreamed of the hunt. In the high-resolution world of the dream, they tracked the wounded buffalo again. They practiced the throw of the spear. They felt the adrenaline of the chase without the risk of death. They dreamed of the landscape. The hippocampus, the brain's cartographer, was busy during REM sleep, consolidating the spatial maps of the territory. It was stitching together the path to the waterhole, the location of the beehive, the dangerous turn in the river where the crocodile waited. They dreamed of the predators. The nightmares of the Stone Age were not abstract anxieties about taxes or social embarrassment. They were literal monsters. They dreamed of the teeth of the leopard, the eyes of the hyena. These nightmares were functional. They forced the brain to rehearse the fight-or-flight response. They kept the fear pathways well-oiled, ensuring that when the real leopard appeared in the grass, the reaction would be instant and automatic. And they dreamed of each other. In the complex social web of the tribe, navigating the relationships was as important as navigating the terrain. They dreamed of the arguments, the bonds, the faces of the kin. They processed the subtle signals of the day, the glance of a rival, the touch of a mate. The dream time was the social digest, the sorting of the emotional harvest. This processing happened in a state of profound vulnerability. To dream is to leave reality. To dream is to go blind and deaf to the world. And yet, they surrendered to it every night. This surrender was only possible because of the architecture of the sleep. The huddle was the fortress that allowed the mind to leave the body. The physical connection, the skin-to-skin contact, played a massive role in the biochemistry of this recovery. The touch of another human releases oxytocin and reduces cortisol. It is a chemical signal that says, "You are safe." For a nervous system that had been redlining all day, scanning for threats, This tactile reassurance was the off switch. It allowed the body to enter the deep restorative stages of slow-wave sleep, where the growth hormones are released, where the muscles are repaired, where the immune system is rebooted. Without the huddle, the deep sleep would be impossible. A solitary human, shivering and afraid, stays in light sleep, ready to bolt. A huddled human, warm and protected, dives deep into the restorative abyss. We slept our way to dominance. Our ability to recover, to heal, to wake up stronger the next day was predicated on this communal pile. There is a poignant beauty in this lack of privacy. In our modern world, we equate dignity with separation. We want our own room, our own space. But for the early human, separation was a tragedy. To be cast out of the huddle, to be forced to sleep alone on the edge of the firelight, was a punishment worse than a beating. It was a form of social death. It communicated that you were no longer part of the organism. You were no longer worth warming. To wake in the night and feel the warm weight of a distinct relative, a grandfather's calloused hand, a sister's braided hair, was to know you were not abandoned. It was a tactile confirmation of your existence and your value. The self was not a solitary island. It was a brick in the wall of the tribe. As the night deepened, the atmosphere of the cave or the camp would change. The carbon dioxide levels would rise slightly with the exhalations of the group, creating a drowsy, heavy air. The smell of the bodies, a mix of pheromones, sweat, and smoke, would become the olfactory signature of safety. This scent of the clan was likely a powerful sedative, a chemical trigger that told the brain it was time to rest. Even the pests, the fleas and lice that were the constant companions of our ancestors, were part of this architecture. The grooming that took place during the day was the prelude to the sleep of the night. The sleep was itchy, imperfect, broken, but it was shared. The scratching of a neighbor was just another rhythm in the night's song. And we must remember the watchers. The sentinel hypothesis suggests that the grandparents, the elders, played a crucial role here. As we age, our sleep patterns fragment. We wake more often, we sleep less deeply. In the modern world, we medicate this. In the Paleolithic, this was a vital adaptation. The elders were the natural night watchmen. They were the ones who woke at the crack of a twig when the deep-sleeping hunters were dead to the world. Their insomnia was the shield of the family. They tended the fire. They watched the stars turn. They guarded the dreams of the young. As the constellation of Orion wheeled across the sky, marking the passage of the hunter's night, the tribe lay in their suspended animation. They were a single, breathing entity, a mound of life in a landscape of geology. They were processing the trauma of the past and simulating the challenges of the future. This legacy of the huddle is still with us. It is in the way a child crawls into their parent's bed during a thunderstorm. It is in the way we unconsciously reach out a hand to touch our partner in the middle of the night. It is in the comfort we feel from a heavy blanket, a simulation of the weight of the pile. We are not designed to sleep alone in empty rooms. We are designed to sleep in a heap, warmed by the blood of our kin, protected by the collective breathing of the ones we love. Finally, the darkness begins to dilute. The wolf hour passes. The biological clocks of the tribe begin to tick toward wakefulness. The cortisol levels begin to rise, preparing the heart for the day. The body temperature begins to climb. The architecture of sleep has done its job. It has carried them through the dangerous void. It has repaired the muscles that threw the spears. It has consolidated the memories of the maps. The first bird sings. A sentinel stirs and kicks the embers. The huddle begins to loosen. The limbs untangle. The night is over. The dream time ends, and the survival time begins again. But they wake up ready, for they have rested in the oldest, strongest fortress on Earth, each other. As the great wheel of the Pleistocene sky completes its final rotation in our narrative, we stand at the precipice of the present. We look back across the abyss of time, through the layers of silt and ash, through the rising and falling of ice sheets, to gaze one last time at the figures on the savannah. The dust has settled on their footprints. The smoke of their fires has long since dissipated into the upper atmosphere, perhaps becoming part of the very air we breathe tonight. Their bones are now silent minerals encased in the earth, displayed in the quiet halls of museums or resting undiscovered beneath the foundations of our cities. But look closer. Look past the silence of the fossil record. If we strip away the noise of the modern world, the hum of the refrigerator, the blue light of the screen, the relentless ticking of the digital clock, we see a ghost standing beside us. It is not a frightening specter, but a familiar one. It is the ghost of our own biology. As we look back at the days of our ancestors, we see a life that was physically demanding, yes. It was a life of callus and claw, of blood and stone. But it was also a life defined by a rhythm that we have largely forgotten, a rhythm that was agonizingly, beautifully slow. We often project our own anxieties onto the past. We imagine the caveman in a state of perpetual panic, running from saber-toothed cats every hour of the day, frantically searching for the next meal. We imagine a life of adrenaline. But the anthropological truth is far more serene. They did not rush from task to task with the frantic, fractured attention of a modern office worker. They did not multitask. They were masters of the singular focus, and more importantly, they were masters of the pause. They spent hours, vast, uncounted stretches of time, simply staring at the horizon. Picture a hunter sitting on a ridge in the Great Rift Valley. The sun is warm on his shoulders. He is not hunting. He is waiting. He is watching the wind move through the grass, observing the way the light hits the distant hills. He is perfectly still. To the modern eye, he looks like he is doing nothing. We might call him lazy. We might ask, why isn't he making tools? Why isn't he gathering wood? But he is doing the most important work of all. He is letting his nervous system calibrate to the frequency of the earth. He is allowing his brain, that expensive, energy-hungry organ, to enter the default mode network. In this state of soft fascination, the brain is not idle. It is knitting together the map of the world. It is processing the memories of the last moon. It is simulating the future. This nothingness was the incubator of human intelligence. It was in the pause that the connections were made. It was in the silence that the idea of the spear thrower, or the needle, or the song was born. They understood, through the deep wisdom of necessity, that rest was not a luxury. In a calorie-restricted world, where every unit of energy had to be earned with sweat and risk, wasting energy was a death sentence. Rest was the fuel for survival. To burn calories on anxiety or fidgeting or unnecessary movement was a biological error. And so, they cultivated a profound physical stillness. Their days were defined not by what they produced. There were no quotas, no spreadsheets, no deadlines, but by how they connected. They connected to the land, reading it like a lover's face. And they connected to each other in the long, lazy grooming sessions that knit the tribe together. Today, we live in a world that has declared war on the pause. We have illuminated the night, banishing the sleep-inducing dark. We have filled the silence with podcasts and notifications. We have turned the midday retreat into the power lunch. We treat exhaustion as a status symbol and rest as a moral failing. We are running the software of a frantic, high-speed civilization on the hardware of a Pleistocene ape, and the hardware is overheating. But we cannot erase 2 million years of evolution with a few centuries of industry. We carry the vestiges of this ancient rhythm in our bones. It is the silent hum in our blood, the old code, that still dictates how we feel, how we wake, and how we sleep. Consider the afternoon slump. It hits you at 2 p.m. The eyelids grow heavy, the focus fractures, a fog descends on the mind. We fight it. We pour coffee into our systems, we eat sugar, We walk briskly. We treat it as a defect in our productivity. But if you listen to the biography of your body, you will hear the truth. This is not a defect. This is a memory. Your body is remembering the African sun. It is remembering the cathedral of the thorn, the acacia tree where your ancestors lay down to hide from the heat. Your circadian rhythm is dipping, lowering your core body temperature, releasing melatonin, urging you to conserve energy during the time of the killing heat. Your biology is screaming for the siesta. It is begging for the huddle. When you feel that slump, do not hate it. Greet it as an old friend. It is the ghost of the savannah calling you to rest. Consider our obsession with the fireplace. Why, in a world of central heating and high-efficiency radiators, do we still pay a premium for a hearth? Why do we put videos of crackling logs on our televisions? Why does the sight of a flickering flame induce a trance-like state of peace? This is the legacy of the altar of the flame. For 1,000,000 years, the evening fire was the center of the human universe. It was the only light in the darkness beyond. The specific frequency of the flicker, the way the light dances, triggers a resonance in the visual cortex. It shifts the brain waves from the beta state of alert problem-solving to the alpha and theta states of relaxation and dreaming. When you stare into a candle or a fireplace, you are not just looking at combustion. You are plugging yourself back into the original charger of the human soul. You are returning to the circle of safety. And consider the skin hunger. We live in an era of unprecedented isolation. We sleep in separate rooms. We maintain personal bubbles. We touch screens more than we touch skin. And yet, when we are stressed, when the cortisol spikes, what do we crave? We crave a hug. We crave the weight of a heavy blanket. We crave the pressure of a massage. This is the legacy of the huddle. Your skin remembers the pile. It remembers the safety of sleeping entangled with 30 other bodies. The mechanoreceptors in your dermis are waiting for the signal that says, "You are safe. The tribe is here." When you feel lonely at night, it is not just a psychological state. It is a biological alarm. Your body is scanning the bed, realizing it is alone, and sending a distress signal to the amygdala. The weight of the duvet is a poor substitute for the weight of a brother or a sister, but it soothes us because it mimics that ancient pressure. Even our anxieties are ancient artifacts. The sudden jolt you feel just as you are falling asleep, the hypnic jerk, that feeling of falling, that is the ghost of the tree. It is the vestibular system remembering the danger of falling from the canopy where our distant primate ancestors slept. The fear of the dark? That is the memory of the Dinophiles, the cat that owned the night. These fears are not malfunctions. They are the survival scripts that kept your lineage alive long enough to produce you. As we walk through the modern world, we are sleepwalkers from another time. Our feet, encased in stiff leather and rubber, still expect the uneven texture of the grass and the give of the mud. When we pace back and forth while on the phone, we are reenacting the great walking, trying to sync our thinking with our movement. When we people watch in a cafe, we are engaging the hunter's eye, scanning the herd, reading the social dynamics of the tribe. We are not designed for the chair. We are not designed for the screen. We are designed for the horizon, for the fire, and for the touch. And so, as you drift toward sleep tonight, I invite you to reclaim this legacy. You do not need to reject the modern world, but you can honor the ancient one within you. You can accept the wisdom of the pause. Imagine your bedroom not as a box in a building, but as a cave. The walls are thick, cool stone, impervious to the wind. The window is the mouth of the cave, looking out onto a vast, star-filled night where the air is clean and cold. You have returned from the great walking of your day. You have carried your burdens. You have hunted your tasks. You have gathered your resources. You have survived. Now is the time of the return. Drop the weight. Feel the muscles of your shoulders, which have been held tight against the invisible stressors of the city, begin to slacken. Let the trapezius muscle, the stress shelf, drop 2 inches. Let the jaw, the grinding tool of the skull, unclench. You are safe. The perimeter is secure. The sentinels, the walls, the locks, the roof are keeping the watch. You do not need to listen for the snap of the twig. Lie down in your nest. Whether it is cotton or linen, imagine it is the nest of the ancients. The woven grass, the soft furs, the aromatic leaves. Feel how it holds you. Let your body adapt to the contours, just as they adapted to the earth. Close your eyes. The darkness is not a void. It is a blanket. It is the velvet curtain that separates you from the demands of the sun. In this darkness, you are not alone. Visualize the huddle. Imagine that all around you, breathing in a slow, rhythmic ocean of sound, are your ancestors. There is the mother who carried her child for 10 miles. She is sleeping now, her breath steady and deep. There is the toolmaker, his hands scarred and calloused, resting on his chest. He is sleeping now. There is the firekeeper, the smell of wood smoke in his hair. He is sleeping now. There is the sentinel, who has finally closed his eyes because the dawn is coming. They are all here. They are in your DNA. They are in the marrow of your bones. You are the latest link in a chain of sleepers that stretches back 200,000 years. You are part of the most successful tribe that has ever walked the earth. And because they survived, because they rested, you are here. Feel the rhythm of your own heart, it is a slow drumbeat, a signal that the danger has passed. Your body knows how to do this. You do not need to try to sleep. Sleep is not a task. It is a surrender. It is a returning home. Your body has practiced this ritual for eons. It knows how to lower the temperature. It knows how to paralyze the muscles. It knows how to wash the brain with the cleansing fluids of the night. Trust your biology. Trust the architect of sleep. The fire is out. The embers are glowing with a dull, comforting red heat in the center of the room. The smoke drifts up, carrying your thoughts away. The silence is not empty. It is full of peace. The tribe is all around you, sleeping in the quiet of history. You are safe. You are warm. You are home. Drift now. Drift back to the blue hour. Drift back to the midday shade. Drift back to the silence of the watch. The day is done. The walking is over. The pause has come. Sleep now. Sleep in the legacy of the pause. Sleep.